Are we live? Yes, I believe we are. StreamYard looks different from the last time. Okay, no, yeah, we're good. Okay. What's up, everybody? Welcome to a special show on Palantir, right? There's been a lot made, a lot of discussion about this company over the last several years and its sort of, invasive dystopian practices. So yeah, this is, I think, going to be a good one. And joined by two very special guests. We have Daniel, who's making his second appearance here on the channel. He did some on the ground reporting on the Hurricane Helene stream we did back in September, early October, whenever that was. So he is an artist and I think iconographer in training, correct?
I'm hoping. I'm hoping.
Hoping. Okay. I thought you were still working on it. And we're also joined by Hesher, making his first appearance over here. I've been on a couple streams over on Baselet Analyzer's channel with him, and so got him on here. He is the proprietor of Alternate Current Radio, co-host of a fantastic show, Boiler Room. A lot of y'all out there are familiar with it, and yeah. So I've been wanting to do a stream on Palantir for a little while. It was kind of one of those things that was in the back of my mind. I was like, oh, yeah, I should probably do something on this. And then Daniel reached out and was like, do you want to do a stream on Palantir? I was like, yes, absolutely. So it kind of lit a fire to get me to actually start to do some research and get this going. So I guess first off, I'm interested in – obviously to get people's general, whether we're doing a book, a movie, whatever it is. When did y'all kind of first start hearing about a Palantir, and what was your kind of initial? What do you sort of think of the company as a whole and what they're into?
You want to go first?
Yeah, sure. I'll go first. I just a little background on me. I have a master's degree in information technology management. And I used to work at the Naval Postgraduate School in Monterey, California. I was a research associate there, and built and maintained IT systems, and did a lot of work with Oracle systems. So and I worked there from Y2K to right around 2015 or so, and I am very familiar with enterprise systems. I'm very familiar with how much they cost, how cost prohibitive they are for normal people, people that aren't running corporations or large business entities. So I've got a bit of experience there, and I was a person that did a lot with Oracle systems when I was doing sysadmin, and we were using at what was at the time one of Oracle's top programs. Of course, we're using their backend database. But we were very interested in kind of the thing we're doing right now, right here. Amazing to see, how consumer grade some of these things have gotten over the years. But back then, having a collaboration suite was kind of a big deal. We were all in stovepiped Outlook programs and, various Microsoft programs. And then databases were kind of over here. Everything was sort of its own thing. But Oracle was at the forefront of creating a collaboration system very similar to what we now have with like Google. We could share drives, Dropbox, like Skype, or I guess RIP Skype, StreamYard, whatever. Like all these features were sort of built into one giant thing. And it was expensive to license. It was expensive to maintain. You couldn't maintain it with your local IT staff unless you send them all off to Oracle school for a couple years. So, you'd be spending, 5-figure amounts several times a year to have contractors come in and maintain these databases. So that's just sort of like where my mind was, what I was doing. And in my mind, as a tax-paying American, I always thought, why can't we slim these things down? Like, we can use open source stuff. We can use SQL instead of Oracle, and we can build LAMP stacks and we can do this kind of stuff ourselves, and save the taxpayers all this money and have something that we can maintain in-house. But silly, idealistic young me didn't realize that the government's not interested in that. They're interested in big contracts with the best people and all that. So I was fighting a, uphill battle with that. But I would get frustrated when I would see a $70,000 ticket support go out to those guys, and just be like, dang, if you had just a SQL database, I could manage it here. So I already had like a lot of frustration about enterprise systems and frustration about the .com crash and all the IPO hype that, turned into a big grift. So I'd say around 2012, I became aware of Palantir. And by 2012, I was fully involved in the 9/11 truth movement. I was fully involved in, online streaming radio, which has now become podcasting pretty much. And it wasn't giant audiences back then. You had to use these little real players that were embedded on all these strange old websites and all this crazy stuff to find the crazy stuff that we get to talk about now. Well, sort of openly on YouTube and other places. But when I found out what Palantir was, I immediately called into an online radio show and I said, hey, this is probably something we should all be aware of. Let's look at who these people are. Let's look at where they get funded. Let's look at who gave them some of their seed money and what they can actually do with this technology. So that's what we'll cover tonight, I'm sure. And that's sort of when and where it hit me the first time. I got right on air.
Yeah, it's a little newish to me. I've been aware of them for the last few years, getting more and more into kind of like the conspiracy theory, the way that the world actually works. And being from the Bay Area myself, the Silicon Valley, I have friends in Silicon Valley. And so that's kind of when I started becoming aware of it.
Yeah, I think the Oracle, I've talked about Oracle a bunch on this show, and if I remember correctly, I don't, Hesher, you may know, is it true? Didn't Larry Ellison, didn't he run a project for the CIA called Oracle? Like, isn't that what it comes out of? Do you know? I think I remember reading that somewhere, but I don't know if that's true or not.
Yeah, I think a lot of our big name tech companies, social media companies, and the like, more than just Palantir got seed money from In-Q-Tel, and they all downplay it now. Like, you can find clips of, I might even have one I could share. You can even find clips of Alex Karp and others saying, oh, it's no big deal. You go online, you search us, and people will be talking about this, but it was a small amount of money, and In-Q-Tel's not really around anymore. No big deal, so they really downplay it. But yeah, I believe that Oracle was in and among those, just like Facebook was, and Palantir and a number of others.
Yeah, the In-Q-Tel thing is not like funny, but it's you can bring up, because like I've had conversations with people where, and I can't think of specific, but like, where those kinds of topics come up, and I'll be like, oh yeah, like these companies were started by, funding from In-Q-Tel, which is like the CIA's venture capital fund. And people are like, what? Because they think as soon as they hear CIA, they automatically think, oh, this person's a kook. And I'm like, no, it's not like some kind of secret thing where it's like, oh, secretly the CIA is. I was like, no, it's like openly. You can go on any mainstream publication where they mention In-Q-Tel, and they're like, oh yeah, it's the CIA's venture capital fund. It's kind of astounding that people just like don't know, or won't pay any attention to it. Very weird.
I remember before I fell down the rabbit hole into the wonderland that we find ourselves in now, like back in the day, like when you remember that show Alias with Jennifer Garner.
Mm-hmm.
That was so cool at the time. You know what I mean? And it even had me looking at my age and looking at the calendar and going, maybe I should get in shape and apply for CIA. This would be fun. You know what I mean? And then, of course, 900 bong loads later, I'm still sitting there going, man, I'm glad I didn't do that. I'm too old for it now, and now I'm too wise for it. These people are insane. But I think there's a lot of people out there that still have that, like their view of the FBI is Jack Bauer, and their view of the CIA is Jennifer Garner. And like, that's that, like, yeah, crazy stuff is happening. And these are the good guys in most cases. We got plenty of movies where they're bad guys and infiltrated and all that stuff. But I think a lot of people just can't bring themselves to read a handful of books or watch a handful of podcasts about the history of these organizations and accept that they're not always acting within a constitutional framework, an America First framework, or even a safety for the public framework. What they're doing, at least at some levels, is much more nefarious and rides completely outside the guardrails of what this country is supposed to be and what their dang mission statement is.
Yeah, absolutely. No, it's very good point. I mean, the media aspect, not to get too far into the CIA thing, but I mean, the media aspect is interesting because kind of my first um, uh, exposure to it was, I mean, I remember like seeing mentions of it because my dad used to watch the Lehrer News Hour every night when I was a kid, and so I'd like watch that with him. But then, they'd like mention the CIA here and there, but it wasn't until the first was it the Born Identity was the first one when that one came out, which is interesting because those three movies was it Identity, Supremacy, and I can't think of the other one, Ultimatum, I think. Those didn't really paint the CIA in a good light, but it was still they're sort of complex because they don't make the people from the CIA look good by and large. But it's still like, oh, this guy's a product of the CIA, and like he's this badass hero. That's so I don't know, and so that was sort of an interesting first exposure to it. But to get back to Palantir, I just thought this was worth mentioning because Sabrina, shout out to Sabrina. I haven't seen her in the chat, but shout out Sabrina. She mentioned this to me that the Bilderberg meetings just happened. They just happened in where they meet, Switzerland, I think it is, and and they were or Sweden, excuse me. They were in Stockholm, and you can't really find much about Bilderberg, and in terms of like what they're actually doing, but they did put their itinerary or topics of discussion rather on their website, and it's worth mentioning. The reason I bring this up is because both Alex Karp and Peter Thiel, who co-founded Palantir, they are both members of Bilderberg. And the topics, this was just interesting. I'm just going to read the topic. And the topics, they just put the names of them. They don't have any further information, but it's kind of, it's a little troubling to read some of these. So here's the topics. Transatlantic relationship, Ukraine, U.S. economy, Europe, Middle East, authoritarian axis, defense innovation and resilience, AI, deterrence and national security, proliferation, geopolitics of energy and critical minerals, and depopulation and migration.
What do you need? What can you say? I saw AI on there. I saw depopulation on there. We know that the big beautiful bill is set to like scrap any sort of AI regulation for the next 10 years. We see how fast AI is developing and how quickly it can mimic us and discover things about us, and we can do nothing for the next decade while it does whatever it's ultimately going to do.
It's the rise of the technocratic state.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, this is trouble because I pulled up I have a ton of links. We're not going to get through all of them, I'm sure, but I mean, it's worth mentioning. And with the Trump administration, they seem to have the foot on the gas with this because yes, Palantir did get major contracts under the Biden administration. It happens under every administration, right? They came out of the 9/11 era, but sorry, I'm losing my voice.
7 years. Their first 7 years in existence, their only contracts were with the federal government, if I recall.
Yes, that's a very good point. And the another thing with the contracts are interesting because that we see the same thing with like, yes, Tesla cars do sell decently well, but most of it seems to me that most of Elon Musk's wealth comes from government contracts because you can't go out and buy something. Exactly. Yeah. You can't go out and buy something from SpaceX. Right. And so he has the same thing. If you look, I was looking at the on Boiler Room the other night when we're talking about Palantir. I looked up their stock chart. And it looks like they're actually down today. But if you go to like the maximum, they were pretty low. and then there was a spike back on Valentine's Day, and then it is spiked to an all-time high, and it is currently at $138.20 a share on the heels of these government contracts. So it's very interesting how people, get rich off of these things. Hesher, do you want me to pull this? I see you got a screen share. Do you want me to go ahead and pull this up?
Yeah, go ahead and pull that up. That's off of X right now. It's Alex Karp and Peter Thiel right there at captured on film at Bilderberg 2025. So just not that long ago, a couple days ago.
Yeah, that's it, huh? Yeah, so I guess they're still pretty tight. I would have to guess if they're getting into a car together. I mean, I don't know anything about these people's personal lives, so I don't know like who they hang out with. But
well, Alex Karp is a he's a proclaimed progressive. He's basically he's basically a card carrying socialist, but pretty interesting to see him and Palantir guy here, right? Because he's supposed to have sort of a other side of the coin, libertarian lean to him, yet they're both founding members of this thing, and they're both making vast amounts of money off of the new administration, the big beautiful bill, just continuing the vast amounts of money they've been making for a long time.
Yeah.
So and that's an interesting point. I don't really know that much. I didn't really get into Alex Karp's politics, but I mean I know he was on the more on the left side of things, and I mean people who are much more well versed in Peter Thiel than I am have talked about this, about how he paints himself as this libertarian type of figure, and a lot of those guys in the so-called PayPal mafia do, but that they're anything but, right? Because if it was just free market capitalism, I mean, like their companies wouldn't exist, right? Because there's not a market. I mean, I guess on some level, and I will say not everything, because the Palantir initially came out of PayPal, which is the technology they were using for. I was reading this earlier. I have the article somewhere, but that they were using to like flag fraudulent and like issues with transactions. And so, like, I think there can be good uses for that, but then, sure. When you like these people that their bread and butter is government contracts, which doesn't really sound very libertarian to me.
Well, and also too, like when I was going into the research of their founding, there was a post 9/11 program called Total Information Awareness, which I think was like a DOD or like some sort of government surveillance system that they weren't able to kind of continue due to the restraints of the government and the restrictions and the oversight. And so a month after that was disbanded, Palantir got the contracts that they were going after. So there's, a little bit of that, the inception of this just wasn't just the PayPal stuff, but it's also, like the government contracted deep state kind of side of things.
Yeah, exactly. I've got a 4-minute clip here if you're into longer form clips. This is Whitney Webb on the Jimmy Dore show talking about exactly what Daniel just brought up, if you want to pull that up.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Oh, I guess I have to hit play, right? I'm all waiting around.
Yeah, so Total Information Awareness was defunded by Congress not long after it was launched because every mainstream media outlet, the ACLU and organizations like it across the board said this will end privacy for Americans. It's
right.
It's unconstitutional. So it was defunded.
And why? What did it do? What did it do?
It sucked up. It was going to basically spy on all Americans, total information awareness, right? And decide who was going to commit a crime before it happened.
Yes.
Terror attacks before it happened, bioterror, even pandemics before they happened, which is why a lot of the policies that originally Total Information Awareness proposed came back during the Trump administration during COVID, and Palantir was the contractor for all of those. What do you know?
So,
but anyway,
so TIA. So just to get this TIA thing, which came from Main Core. So TIA, they're going to use.
It's related to Main
So
Core.
related. So they're going to use every telephone call you ever make, every text you ever make, every Google search, every website you ever go to. They have a way of collecting all of that data.
They collect all of it.
And they put it into a database on you, and they have this kind of capability. And so immediately after this was invented, you're right, all these organizations pushed back against it. So the government said, okay, we're not going to do it anymore. But then Palantir was like, well, we'll do it because we don't have those.
Well,
go ahead.
It's even worse than that. Palantir didn't exist yet. Peter Thiel created Palantir as total information awareness was getting into trouble and experiencing the public backlash. And as they were setting it up, they used Richard Pearl to connect them with Poindexter, who was running total information awareness, about essentially privatizing the program and having Palantir do what TIA, or total information awareness, had intended to do. And total information awareness, though it was housed in DARPA, was intimately pushed and developed with CIA involvement, particularly the chief information officer of the CIA at the time, a guy named Alan Wade, who was actually a business partner of Ghislaine Maxwell's sister, Christine. Fun fact.
So let me just break in just one more side, just so people realize the scope of what we're talking about, because this is really ominous, right? So, and this has been coming for a long time, and now Peter Thiel and Palantir is at the forefront of this. And so the Poindexter's and a DARPA program manager, this is from your article, LifeLog this is what they sought to do. They sought to build a database tracking a person's entire existence that included an individual's relationships and communications, meaning phone calls, mail, email, all, plus their media consumption habits, their purchases, and much more, in order to build a digital record of, quote, everything an individual says, sees, or does. Jeez. LifeLog
this program was LifeLog.
This is LifeLog. They would then take this unstructured data and organize it into discrete episodes or snapshots, while also mapping out relationships, memories, events, and experiences. This seems so Aldous Huxley crazy futuristic, but it's not future, it's here now. And they have these
happened decades ago.
And so the person in charge of this right now, or the person pushing it in the private sector, would be Peter Thiel. And Peter Thiel is now responsible for JD Vance's funding and getting JD Vance connected with Donald Trump, and for funding, being a big funder of Donald Trump and JD Vance's campaign right now. And so that's why this is all important.
Yeah, it's also important because Palantir is really a CIA front company.
That was the Maxwell connection especially was very interesting. These people just seem to show up in, in everything.
Yeah,
right?
There was, when I was looking at things, I think Epstein actually helped Palantir with the funding to get it off the ground with $40 million.
Oh, wow. I did not know that.
Yeah. It's like, never mind 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon. We play 6 degrees of Jeffrey Epstein these days and 6 degrees of Palantir.
Whitney Webb said something interesting a while back in an interview that, because you remember Peter Thiel got outed as gay in Gawker, that gossip website. And then he bankrolled when Hulk Hogan's adult video got leaked by Gawker. He bankrolled the Hulk Hogan lawsuit to shut down Gawker, and people were like, "Oh, it's because I can't remember the name. Was it Nick something that ran Gawker? I don't remember." But apparently, he just hated the guy so much that he was like, "Oh, he's going to bankroll the lawsuit to take them out." And interestingly, Whitney had a theory that Gawker actually had Epstein's. I think they're the ones that published his black book, And because so the theory is that they were going to expose Thiel's ties to Jeffrey Epstein, and that was kind of leading up to when the whole Epstein thing kind of blew up, and that is actually why he shut down, bankrupted Gawker in the lawsuit.
Wouldn't surprise me at all. Yeah,
I believe it. That whole scenario was an absolute mess. I mean, I used to listen. That was that all for Hulk. That all went down at Bubba the Love Sponge's house. I remember listening to Bubba the Love Sponge on Sirius XM back in the day, and I had a Sirius XM account because I would listen to Howard and listen to Liquid Metal sometimes. And oh my gosh, what a failed service. Who buys satellite radio anymore? I can't believe, if you're still listening to satellite radio, what are you doing? I mean, this stuff is so crazy. But yeah, that Bubba guy was a nutbag, and he made friends with Hulk, and Hulk went over and doinked his wife, I guess, and it all went downhill from there. I guess Peter Thiel came out the winner in the whole thing, though, right? Hulk had to get divorced and be in court for years, and Bubba lost his credibility and his job. Credibility, if he had any, I don't really know. I guess he was credible at NASCAR updates, but that's about it.
Was that his thing? I never listened to him.
Yeah, he was like sort of a more southern version of Howard Stern, I would say.
Okay. So I got
Jersey or something like that. I don't actually know where he was from, but he was just a grittier, more rednecky version of Stern. Okay,
I've never been a Stern fan, but yeah, I think that guy, especially
there was some good years. Like if you're my age, if you're X Gen, like the early years, there was some fantastically funny stuff and stuff that broke television and broke radio, and that was all super cool. But man, as soon as Trump came along, he just turned into a spineless, weird propagandist nutbag. Like, you gotta be crazy to listen to that guy.
He stayed in his apartment for 3 years, didn't he, during COVID or whatever?
He's a total COVIDian cult member.
That's insane. I didn't know about that. I think he was one of the ones, if I remember correctly, that was saying that people who didn't get the shot should not be given. I think he was one of the first ones, if I remember right. He was one of the first ones that came out and was these people should be denied any kind of medical services, period, and they should all die.
Yeah, him and Jimmy Kimmel.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, Kimmel. He went crazy too. It's so I got this article pulled up. We can run through this, and I'll just kind of read through. It's kind of long, but I'll read through some of it. And if y'all feel free to jump in with any comments. This is an article in the Last American Vagabond. And by the way, folks, I didn't know what we were going to talk about, but I'm going to link all the ones that we talk about in the description after the show. But let's see. This is by Derek Bros. Let me see if I can find it. Oh, here it is. Okay, yeah, so this is Welcome to the Palantir World Order. And I got to say, as a Lord of the Rings fan, it's very annoying that these people have co-opted Lord of the Rings.
Agreed.
Palantir, and then wasn't J.D. Vance's hedge fund or venture capital fund, was that the Mithril Capital?
Yes, sir.
I think that's right. Very annoying. Okay. How does a company with CIA ties and 2 steering committee members of the secretive Bilderberg Group as founders end up in the White House? This question should be on the minds of every free-thinking person, regardless of political affiliation or lack thereof. And this really is. I mean, this is a sort of nonpartisan kind of issue.
Yeah, not a right-left thing.
Yeah.
No, not at all. I mean, this is something you would think everybody would be able to come together in agreement over. And it's interesting because, with total information awareness, where they're starting to become backlash over that. It's weird with the internet being. I mean, the internet was around back then, but it's not what it is. It was not what it is today. And it's interesting that now that we're more connected than ever and have access to more information than ever, it's like people are less interested than ever, and it's harder to get people's attention because I think the internet has been flooded with so much crap and so much propaganda. It's like Josh Tillman, aka Father John Misty, the singer-songwriter, said that the internet. I'm kind of paraphrasing, but he was talking about he said like, oh yeah, the internet was supposed to be this great tool of democracy and it would connect people and people could discuss ideas, and it all just turned into shall we say adult videos. Like it pretty much descended into filth. And and now people, it's like, oh, here's somebody dancing with clown makeup on TikTok, and it's like this is actually important.
I mean, all the information's there. There's just so much of an onslaught of things that are designed to distract you. So like if you're really interested in these things, you can find it. It's just you have to find your way through all of those things that are intentionally designed to distract you, to get you to what you're trying to look for.
Right. And if you arrive with any sort of bias whatsoever, you're just going to get confirmation bias. That's the hardest part, I think, especially for newbies that are trying to, trying to grasp at the straws of truth on the corrupted interwebs. Can I get past my preconceived notions? Because whatever those are, this is for all of us, myself included. Yeah. There's a ton of stuff that just wants to wash you into that swim lane, no matter what, and other stuff that is designed to just piss you off and put you further into that swim lane. So it's very messy. The media is the ultimate enemy of the people in the modern era. And who would have thunk it? If you were there in the wild, wild west of the internet, who'd have thunk that's where it would end up?
Well, everything ends up getting co-opted at some point, right? So like anything that's organic, ends up getting co-opted by something. And I think that's, not just with Palantir and the things we're talking about, but you can kind of just expand that out to even people's hopes and aspirations for the Trump administration. It's like at the end of the day, maybe it's a little too early and maybe we don't need to get in the partisanship stuff, but it seems to me like it's already on. It was always going to be co-opted.
Yeah, that's a good point. And I know a lot of people. I've taken a lot of flack for criticizing Trump, and I mean, as soon as I saw I'm not a Trump supporter, never have been, but as soon as I saw in the first days of the administration when he brought Larry Ellison up at the White House to speak at a press conference. And I think I've played the clip on the show before, but I'm like, this is the guy who openly says that he wants to watch everything you do. This weird, creepy voyeur guy who wants to sit around watching you all the time, and everything you do, he wants to know about it. And it's like, who agreed to this? Why does this guy just get to do this?
And how does that fit in? How does that fit into their narratives about themselves and their companies too? You look at a company like Google, for example, and they tell you that they're very socialistic, right? That's their company ethos. We're about the little people. But the people at the top of that corporation, they behave like hyper capitalists. They are sucking at the teat of the government. They are absorbing competitors. They are, changing their name from Google to Alphabet. What does Alphabet make us all think of? Just, I don't know, every three-letter agency in the freaking bloated government as it is. They're almost telling us, it's in our face. Look at Facebook changing their name to Meta. You've got Alphabet, basically a liaison for any three-letter agency. Then you've got Facebook, Meta /LifeLog, and they're grabbing all your metadata. And then you've got Oracle, which is just the back end to all of it, right? A database so sophisticated that it can handle all of that information. And then you've got Palantir. Palantir is the product they sell to the people with the data. So that's the window. It literally is the Palantir seeing stone. It is the window into the big data that various entities own, and they offer it to them at a corporate level, at a law enforcement level, at an international level, and at a national level. So, and people that work at Palantir will tell you, and they'll tell you correctly, we are not creating a giant database. That's true. Palantir as a company is not creating and holding a database. But think about the giant NSA database and data collection center up in Utah. What do they do with all that data? They've got, like Dor was saying, they've got all your calls, all your emails, all your SMS, all your apps, everything, all your purchases. They have all that. How do you look at it? How do you make sense of that much data? You look through the Palantir lens at the data. So the people at Palantir are doing legitimate business. That's why this is hard to talk about and hard to conceptualize for a lot of people, because they're helping businesses at the most fundamental level. Their tool is helping businesses look at very large data sets. There's nothing wrong with that. You can do that with a SQL database. The problem is who they're selling it to, what are the ethics, morals, and mission statements of those people, and what data are they sitting on? And, you do the math.
Well, and also, too, there's just, since it's not a government, agency, there's no oversight, so there's no way to, so oversight is almost synonymous with accountability. Even if they were doing everything right or whatever by the books, there's no way for you to know that or not. And the inverse is also true. If they're, programming certain things in there, adding, the ability for those programs to make judgment calls based on that information, there's no oversight or accountability to that either.
And they're using it for targeting data now in war zones, if we can call genocide locations war zones.
Yeah. And, it's not just here in America that, Trump just gave them all those contracts, but it's France, Ukraine, Gaza, Karp is, pretty open Zionist. So Israel's using all of this. And so it seems to me, and I could be wrong, and I may be way over my skis, but I think people have the tendency of looking at these intelligence agencies in like a national way of looking at things, like Mossad, CIA, MI6, but I really think they're like all one big cartel.
Yeah. And
they're all working together all across the world.
Yeah, there's no jurisdictions here. Like if you've seen oh gosh, what's that movie called? Sicario, for example. If you've seen Sicario, you can see exactly how a agency like the FBI can run and go operate in another country. They just have to have someone else in the group from CIA who's doing, something that's above their pay grade, and boom, you can go on joint things. It's like, you're absolutely right, Daniel. This idea that there's like a quote unquote jurisdiction for an intelligence agency, especially if it's one that's within the Five Eyes countries or the G7, is a fantasy land. That is complete fantasy land. There's certainly some things that they keep jurisdictionally. They keep as many secrets from each other as they do from us, but they certainly work together where the rubber meets the road and where it really matters. And that's how you end up with things like many would say things like JFK and 9/11.
Yeah. Well, and even just to add a little bit on that, it seems to me that in terms of the way that the world actually operates, I have this conversation with people all the time where, they look at, countries as the blocks in which to measure things. And with, the intelligence agencies and the corporations and the central banking system and all of these things, it's really a globalized oligarchy in charge of things, And so I think, the use for them is to distract us with these divisions, countries, etc. But really, at the end of the day, they're all working together, in a certain aspect, and it's a lot more globalized than I think people realize. And I think the idea of, countries and how power works within governments and countries is a little bit just like what we explained, where it's really not, centralized in these countries, but it's really like a huge global effort.
Yeah, a lot of good points there. I mean, I think the accountability point is good because, excuse me, because when companies go public, they are ostensibly accountable to their shareholders. But I'm sure I don't know who the major shareholders in Palantir are, but I'm sure they're not concerned with privacy regulations, and they're not gonna be trying to stand in the way of of what Palantir is doing. And Hesher, you said something the other night on Boiler Room, and I'm glad you went into the Oracle thing and as well with explaining like the database and everything, because you said, if I remember correctly, it was you can't have Palantir without Oracle, and you can't have Oracle without Palantir. So they kind of work hand in glove, which I thought was a pretty astute point. And I had.
I'm assuming. I don't mean to interrupt, but I'm
Yeah.
assuming that because of my experience in government with database, like they stick to Oracle. It's the most robust. It's freaking expensive. It keeps money flowing back and forth between the government and that corporation, and they really go out of their way to absorb any competitors. So it's an assumption of mine, but I think it's I would definitely bet my bottom dollar on it.
Yeah, and I think I would agree with that. I mean, I would think that's probably true. And I mean, like I was mentioning with Palantir earlier, and with the technology about like flagging transactions, whether maybe fraud or something. It's like these companies they do have useful purposes that I think are benign, right? And it's not like I don't want to make it seem like everything these kind of their entire service is evil. Like, and I think that especially when we live in a sort of data-driven world, being able to more easily parse through that and put in databases, whatever. I'm not like a data guy, so I'm maybe out of my depth here, but I think that those can be good things, and it's like these people have ideas that can really work well, but then when you get into the realm of where it's like, oh, well, why don't we just compile a database on every single person in the U.S. And there's a lot of issues with memes in the sense that when it first kind of several years ago, whenever people were talking more and more about it was in the following the Snowden Edward Snowden revelations. It kind of became a joke, right? Where people would be like, there are all these memes about, what my FBI agent who's watching me through my webcam sees. It's like, okay, and I think that was, maybe this sounds, conspiratorial or whatever, but I mean, I think that I wouldn't be surprised if it was some government agency who started putting those out, because it sort of turned into a joke. Like, this is an actual serious problem, and now people are just going to resign to it. They're like, oh yeah, well, whatever. They have all my data anyway. Who cares? It's like, okay, that's a really bad. That's a really bad attitude to take on this, and it's kind of like the Epstein thing, where that one I kind of have mixed feelings on, because in some way, like the Epstein didn't kill himself memes became in a way, it sort of kept that within the public consciousness, but at the same time it kind of made it into, I mean, it was a meme, but it kind of made it into a bit of a joke. And it also, as we're big fans of Whitney Webb over here, of her work, and as she's pointed out, it became all about just the Lolita Express and Lolita Island crimes, and they didn't get into. It sort of kept people in that. It was kind of like a limited hangout, like Netflix did the documentary, or what. I never watched it, but the documentary where they only talked about the sex crimes, which are awful. Like, I'm not trying to minimize those, but it's like what's just because it's it's salacious, it gets people talking, it draws.
It's a distraction.
Eyeballs. Yeah, but exactly, it's a distraction because it distracts from his massive financial crimes and his involvement in the kind of things we're talking about here today.
Yeah, it's the network, right? So, it like what we were saying about the internet, like the distraction and then the truth. Like the truth is there, but they dangle the distraction in front of you, and everyone just piles on that.
Yeah, it's memifying the world. We won the meme war. We won the 2016 to 19 meme war. 100%. Where's my meme veterans out there? But the side effect of winning the meme war is the left finally caught up. They can almost meme as good as the right and the independents, and the whole of reality is now a meme. The whole of reality is now a clown show. Everything we're seeing makes us have to double think: is this a simulation or some kind of purgatory that I'm stuck in after the world ended? This doesn't make sense anymore. We're all just completely desensitized to just about everything. I mean, what is left? Like Jane's Addiction, nothing's shocking. Like, what is left to shock us at this point? I thought we hit the apex with Two Girls, One Cup like over a decade ago, but no, now that is like, that's like sex ed for kindergartners at this point. So like we live in a completely nonsensical wonderland, and we're all trying to figure out how to get back to a reality that doesn't feel so morbidly psychedelic, and there's no way out. We just keep finding the freaking caterpillar smoking the hookah.
Oh, that's a good that's a good analogy.
Can I touch on a point that you made earlier, Maddie?
Yeah, absolutely.
Where like Palantir is essentially a tool, right? So like there's going to be good ways to use a tool and nefarious ways to use a tool. The thing that kind of is concerning to me is that, do you trust the person that is holding that tool and using that tool? And when it comes to Palantir, it's emphatically no. Just based off of a very superficial understanding of who these people are, how they do business, how they conduct themselves, all these kinds of things. It's like, yeah, I mean, they're going to go out there promoting the usefulness of this tool, and they're not wrong about that. But it's the things that they're not promoting, the ways that it can be manipulated or once again co-opted, which I think is where the real money and value of those products come into play.
Yeah. And it's like this government has been for decades sitting on Americans' private records and storing Americans' private records in a way that is at best questionable and at worst illegal, nefarious, and breaking our Fourth Amendment rights. And the more that they've collected, the more difficult it's been to know what to do with it, how to utilize it, how to scan it. Well, now we are in the age of quantum computing. Google has the ability to create quantum chips now. I am not a physicist. I can't explain this quantum stuff to you. All I know is that they've made a computer chip that moves so rapidly that it could break reality. And they now have this tool that I believe allows them to just put someone's name in, or social security number, or driver's license number, or Google chat handle, and bring up an entire lifeline. Like the LifeLog concept is now complete, and the data for it was being collected back in the 90s. AT&T got caught having a bifurcated inbound switch in San Francisco that was going to a government entity. So all the phone calls were being recorded old school style by the government and probably locked away in some Indiana Jones style, warehouse. But they can digitize all that stuff. They have digitized all that stuff, I would imagine. And since everything has become digital, they just capture it in real time, and they've been storing it in this enormous taxpayer-funded data center in Utah for decades now. I think they funded that in the 2016 or maybe even earlier, 2008 NDAA. So what do you do with all that information? The computers aren't fast enough. We don't have a software that can search it all, and we don't have the artificial intelligence to take the metadata on all these and biometrics on all these people, these tens of millions of people, just hundreds of millions of people just in this country But now they have all that, right? And it's through a fabric, a tapestry of IT conglomerates and giants who are now woven into our political system. They have the database for it. They have the physical location for it. They have the computing power for it. They have the AI to go in and fix all the metadata. They've got Meta providing data. They've got Google providing data. They've got the banks providing data. You know what I mean? They've got the communication systems providing data. How do you look at all that? Easy. An AI-fueled Palantir software that can scrape it, summarize it, gist it, timeline it, and literally show an analyst a 3D picture of your entire life. You picture your kids on Instagram, awesome, they're cute, we like, double tap, but maybe going into the Palantir, maybe getting facial recognition, maybe getting biometrics off them. That's weird. We should be told that if that's happening.
Yeah, and it also feels like the same way that a lot of the intelligence agencies up until now, they use blackmail as one of their like major ways to, protect their power, control their interests, etc. It feels like this Palantir and everything that Hesher just described is like the ultimate blackmail system, where all of your information on everyone is available to the people that can utilize it in order to shut down dissent, to be able to control the population. And that's just like one aspect of the power of this like, incredible, not in a positive way, but incredible thing that they've created.
Yeah, and I think it's like I was mentioning, like with the FBI agent memes, like first of all, they put it off into a different agency. But the other thing is it's not like, and this seems obvious, but I think I've heard people who think that like they're actually being watched all the time, and it's like, well, you are and you aren't, right? You're being watched in the sense that everything you do online, at least, is being, collected and stored and housed. Everything you do on your phone, whether it's phone calls, text, whatever. And it's like, so it's not like they have somebody sitting there and it's like, okay, everything that, Hesher is doing online, they have one guy sitting there looking at everything he's doing. But it's like, no, if they need to know that, then okay, we'll go put his name in the database and like say,
pop it out.
Yeah, like they can pull anything up. So
yeah,
I mean that's still a massive amount of data to go through. And like with like the quantum, it's like having the computing power to do these things, like that is necessary. But it's like, yeah, they still, and that's something that Daniel, you mentioned like with the blackmail is that's, people have theorized that's why Epstein kind of went away from that, because that model was over and done with. Like if they would have first of all, if they would have ruined someone's life, like the guy, y'all remember the Las Vegas shooting back in 2017, where the guy, I think it was the shooter's brother, came out, and I don't remember it's been a while since I looked into that, but he was saying something, and then they I think it was the FBI or something announced, oh yeah, by the way, this guy who was speaking out about this, we found shall we say illegal material involving very young people on his computer, a computer that had apparently never been connected to the internet, had never downloaded anything, and they just found it, and then that guy just went away. You never heard from him again. So it's like they'll just plant it if they have to.
Yeah.
Stephen Paddock's brother.
Stephen Paddock, yes, I couldn't remember his name.
And we just had an equally strange public appearance from the suspected murderer in that where was it, Michigan or something like that, case that just happened this week. That guy's brother spoke out in a very, very strange video. It very much reminded me of Stephen Paddock's brother, and it was something that stuck out like a sore thumb in the media, because it's not something, if there was a legitimate investigation going on, it's not something that investigators would have allowed to have go into mainstream media.
Do you have the video?
I can look for it. I got a whole bunch of tabs open here. I got a couple Karp clips I would like to have you play too, but I don't want to interrupt Bros's article here because I've read it and it's very on point.
Yeah, it's very good. And I do want to make one quick, because I thought about this, because like we're talking about the 10-year ban on regulating AI and the so-called Big Beautiful Bill, which is like, dude, what are you for? Like, he's like
Right.
almost 80 years old, and that's the name he comes up with. Anyway, not to keep relying on Whitney Webb, but I was listening to an episode she did on the Tales from the Crypt podcast recently, or she did it, I think 4 or 5 years. I bet it was like 3 or 4 years ago. And I don't have, I have the screen recording of the relevant section on my phone, but I don't have the video pulled up at the moment with the timestamp. But she mentioned on there that just kind of talking about the sort of surveillance state, and like Henry Kissinger, if the sort of model that he had talked about with the guy from Google, it was Eric Schmidt. Sort of their model of surveillance state. And she was saying that if their model is going to happen, then it's going to be come from, and I'm trying to remember exactly how she said it, but it was basically saying that it was going to be SoftBank was going to be the company that would sort of, I guess, be the vehicle for implementing all this. And then what do we know? SoftBank, I couldn't remember the number. I knew it was a lot, so I pulled it up. Yeah, SoftBank pledged to invest $100 billion in the U.S. over the next 4 years with a focus on AI and related infrastructure. Now, you could say, well, that's just her opinion. It's like, well, I don't know. I mean, sure, but based on the case she laid out, I was like, this seems to be exactly what's happening. And then, so this is like, yes, all companies, or excuse me, all the presidents in recent times, yeah, like they're all sort of work hand in hand with the tech companies and the surveillance state and all of that. And we've seen expansions of it since George W. Bush, I guess his first term. But now it's like in overdrive. It's like, I don't know if they missed a step somewhere or something, but now it's like they're speeding to get it done. So anyway, that's just something to think about. And yeah, we do have Sabrina. What's up, Sabrina? I just mentioned, yes, thank you, Sabrina, for the call out on the Bilderberg earlier. Okay.
Why, Maddie, I'm curious. This is sort of a rhetorical question, but why are Crypt Keeper, Skeksis, aging neocon, and aging hippie liberal douches who don't even know how to do email so interested in AI? Can someone please explain to me how people that don't even know how to do a Zoom call after 2020 or even, get out of their wheelchair in some of their cases on Capitol Hill, how is it that they understand enough about artificial intelligence to be so invested in it? Like, what is it? What are we not being told, you guys?
I would just chalk it up to they think it's like the next industrial revolution. And so they know that's where the money and the power is, even if they don't know anything about it.
Yeah, I would love to sit in on the briefing. I would love to be a fly on the wall when they brief like Nancy Pelosi and like some of these other weirdos on why they should, all in, across the aisle vote to put things like this through when they aren't even people that use the internet. It's beyond me. I don't understand it. I would love to see the pitch.
Well, a great something related to that is when Marjorie Taylor Greene went on Twitter after it started coming out about the 10 years of no regulation for AI. And she was like, if I would have known that, because she voted for the bill, and she said, if I would have known that was in the bill, I wouldn't have voted for it. It's like, so you just confirmed that you're not reading. I think these people, I don't think they
no one reads
anything.
the bills.
Yeah,
no one reads the bills. No one knows what they're voting for. Points. Yeah. I mean, at best, their staffers read it and relay them the information, but no one cares. That's the illusion in which we think that things work and operate. But in reality, you have all the lobbyists that are already contacting these people and being like, hey, we're going to push this or push that during the, into this bill. And it turns out that, no one's reading these things. It's all just handed to them. They're told what to do. They're actors. They're ugly actors.
Yeah. They spend more time getting threats, dealing with threats about what's going to happen if they do or don't do what their party tells them to, or getting incentives for doing exactly what the party's going to tell them to. And I would say most of them eventually fall into that latter category if they didn't start in that category.
To begin with, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it is. I remember maybe it was the AI thing. Maybe it was something else. There's been so much that's happened. It's hard to keep it all straight. But there was something during the Biden administration where he was talking about whatever it was. And I remember thinking, I was like, this guy's like 82 years old. How does he even know about that? I mean, and not to say that, 80-something-year-olds can't be, like use the internet. Like I've met people who are that age who do, but I'm just saying, like, it was something that you would think this is beyond anything that this guy would even have, would even be thinking about, would even be aware of. And so I don't know if, they're getting their talking points from somewhere. But it is interesting to see these people who are all in on on the AI, and it's like, do they even understand? I mean, I don't even understand some of it.
Yeah, we barely understand it.
I don't understand a lot of it.
Exactly. If we as guys that are all three of us involved with tech, and we don't really get it, like we see it. We use it, we see it popping up and getting upgraded every 6 weeks. But at the same time, we still see all these people at the CFR, at Davos, at Bilderberg, at all these things within our own government. I suspect in that pitch, it has a lot to do with China. I suspect they leverage the fears that are inherent in some of those people on Capitol Hill. They say China's doing it and XYZ is going to happen and they're going to have XYZ level of control. And if we don't have XYZ level of control, we're hosed. I think that's how they sell it to the neocons. Maybe they sell it to the to the libs that way too. I'm not sure.
Yeah, that's a good point. I don't know. It's definitely something to think about. So yeah, I'm glad you asked. It's a good question to think about. I was real quick. We will get back to Derek's article here, but I was looking for something involving. I was going to see if, because I know Peter Thiel's in Bilderberg, and I was just looking to see if he was involved in Trilateral Commission or CFR, but I did come up with a very interesting article here. Just touch on this really quick. This is from Yahoo Finance. Peter Thiel is scared of a government that's powerful enough to stop something like AI. Says we'll have a global totalitarian character. Which that's not funny, but
wait, does he mean an artificially intelligent global character of totalitarianism? Is that what he's saying? Am I hearing that right?
It is. Let's see. So the billionaire tech investor Peter Thiel has cautioned against the growing movement to regulate AI. In a recent speech at Cambridge University, Thiel shared his concerns that although AI might be dangerous, the true threat could come from a government with the authority to regulate it. His biggest concern is that such a government would have a global totalitarian character, as he put it.
What?
A government that's powerful enough to stop something like AI has to have some sort of global totalitarian character. He warns that AI regulation is necessary, but there's a slippery slope in giving governments the power to oversee and stop advanced technology development.
Wait. Let me get this straight. Do I have this straight? I live in a country where they regulate my income, my ability to drive a car, my ability to go catch a fish, my ability to get married without their permission, my ability to do just about any freaking thing in the world. I can't even get a freaking X account without giving up my data. So I have to give up my data or have a license or pay a tax or all three and more in some cases, sign away your firstborn, I don't know, to do just the most mundane thing that is within your constitutional rights to do. But we can't. They want to do unconstitutional things too, right? They want to take away your Second Amendment right. They want to hamper your First Amendment right. They want to regulate everything, every little thing you do. They want to regulate whether the freaking chicken you go eat at Chipotle has mRNA juice in it or not. But we have oligarchs.
They got to draw the line somewhere.
Yeah. But the tech oligarchs are like, no. Only a totalitarian government, authoritarian government would try to regulate AI. What are you talking about, dude? They regulate everything here. We can't even get eggs that aren't regulated.
Yeah, it's totally insane. I mean, especially if you know somebody. I was talking to a friend of mine the other day who works in a very regulation heavy field, and he was just talking about the inlet. He was like, there's paperwork I have to fill out for the federal level. There's paperwork I have to fill out for the state level. There's paperwork I have to fill out for the local level. There's, EPA. There's like all this different paperwork that he has to fill out. It's very heavily regulated. And yeah, but it's like this guy who basically owns the presidency. He said a government that's powerful enough to stop it, that seems really, really scary to me.
It's the classic rules for thee, but not for me.
Yeah,
exactly.
I mean,
stop it from what? What are you saying? What's the power to stop it? I don't think anyone's asking for the power to stop it from doing anything, but I don't know, globiciding us, or crushing our financial system, or destroying all our personal relationships. I mean, has anyone seen Miss Davis on? I think it's on Hulu. It's insane. It's absolutely insane. It's one of the most heady shows I've seen. Heady. There's so many AI apocalypse and robot apocalypse series and movies and stuff now, but that one was twisted. It was all about AI subverting everybody's to-do list, basically. Like, is sort of a story of what would happen if AI took a godlike stance in society and it started tasking people, just carrot and stick all the time. Here's your task today. And it wouldn't come to you from the AI. It would come to you from other humans who had their little, AI earbud in, and would, like, their task for the day is to give you your task for the day, and it's just this trickle down effect. And every human being on the planet is basically just willingly becoming part of a video game for an AI overlord. It's just toying with everybody in dramatic ways.
What'd you say the name of that show was? We'll write that down. I was gonna look it up.
It's called, I forget if it's Mrs. or Ms. I think it's MS Davis. And it's got homegirl from the Glow series on Netflix, which I enjoyed.
Okay. Yeah, I'm gonna look that show up. I have not heard of that one.
It's really good. There's a whole theological underpinning to it, because the main character is a nun, and she's like went to the nunnery because she wanted to avoid all of this madness, everybody falling into the AI, and she gets there and she meets Jesus, basically. And it just goes from there.
It does sound interesting. Yeah, I'm gonna look that one up.
But is it going to do? I mean, I bring it up because it's like that is one of hundreds of scenarios, maybe thousands, maybe infinite scenarios that could completely and drastically, change humanity into something that will not recognize what we are right now. Just a bunch of people walking around looking into their small black mirrors. Those are probably going to go away. The black mirrors and the mouses and the keyboards, they're on the way out. They're on the way out.
Neurochip.
Yeah.
Yeah, that which I wonder why, if Elon Musk believes in Neuralink so much. Like, why doesn't he take the initiative and be the first one to get chipped?
Well, maybe he is, man. Some of these guys glitch out so bad and have the weirdest stutter. I feel like there's a Cyrano effect, like they're actually listening to something before they speak or as they speak. That's a super dark conspiracy theory of my own personal. I think some of these guys already have it, and it feeds some of their rhetoric. Perhaps I've watched these guys glitch out a million times, but maybe he's set to benefit on the further end of this. Whatever happens because of AI being completely unregulated for 10 years in the United States, the cure for that, the quote unquote cure for that, may be the Neuralink. You have to merge with it to be able to defend yourself from it.
Oh man, that's dystopian. Yeah, I mean,
I'm here, buddy.
What was that?
He said that's why I'm here.
I mean, the Elon, that's a weird thing because I get it. Sometimes intelligent people aren't always the most eloquent, but whenever Elon was kind of first becoming more of a prominent character back, I don't know, 10 years ago, whatever it was, and people were like, oh, he's like the smartest guy ever. And I listened to maybe like, I don't know, 5 minutes of that first big podcast he did with Joe Rogan. And I thought, like, this guy can barely form a sentence. Like he's barely, and I think that was before he became a raging drug addict. And it's like this guy just can't talk. I was like, you mean to tell me this is the smartest guy in the world, and he can barely put words together in an order that makes sense?
I don't want to go off on too much of a pivot, but like Elon Musk is one of the biggest psyops. Like everything that we're told about the guy, like none of it's real. Like he's not a good engineer. He's not running all these companies. He's just taking all of the government money, and he's like the spokesperson for everyone else doing things behind the scenes. But yeah, I mean, some people may disagree with me. I just think he's a giant psyop himself.
The video game aspect alone proves it. Does any of us know anyone that is a top tier, top rated video game player on some of these games that he's supposed to be in the top 5 world players? You may know people like this or people who aspire to be like this. Do we know any of them that are running 7 companies and getting government contracts while they're...
That's what I'm saying. It reminds me of that one episode of South Park where they're all like, fat and pimpled out. And like, that's what it takes to be that level of a gamer, right? There's no way this guy's just, exactly. There's no way this guy's just doing it in his spare time. And that's like one of at least a dozen things you can point to Elon Musk about and be like, that doesn't make any sense. Like, this is all bullshit. Excuse my French.
Yeah, I mean, that's something, and people will talk about, oh, he's just so smart. It's like, okay, you can be smart, but nobody, I don't care how good at time management you are, you cannot effectively run 7 companies and a government agency and be like the top 5 best video game player in the world. And like nobody, there's just not that much time.
And have 11 kids. Yeah, exactly. Like, yeah.
Hooking up? Are you kidding? Hooking up takes us even more time than becoming a top tier gamer, doesn't it? I mean, come on.
Totally insane. But to get back to this article real quick, there was, so this is kind of where it's, because I think I did want to hit on this because I think everybody's favorite Trump sycophant Laura Loomer. We're huge fans of Laura Loomer over here. She, who's probably most famous for chaining herself to the front door of Twitter headquarters. But she was out on Twitter the other day saying that, we need to, was it?
I've got it on my screen if you want to bring it up.
Yeah. Let me pull that up. I couldn't remember exactly how she phrased it. Oh, hang on. Let me stop sharing this one. And then there we go. Yeah, there it is. Time to deploy Palantir tech to Los Angeles to deal with the illegals. You'd love to see it. You're lying if you say you wouldn't, right? And here's the problem is I don't think, yes, I am not a fan of open borders. Okay, I don't know how y'all feel about that. I am certainly not in favor of it, and I think that the just unchecked immigration during the Biden administration and during the first Trump administration, I know they like to say that Trump had the most secure border in history in his first administration. But if I recall correctly, I'd have to look at the numbers on this. I think we hit record levels of illegal immigration. They use it because they say, during 2020, that's when we had, and it's like, well, yeah, because everybody was locked down everywhere. Nobody could go anywhere. That doesn't count. But anyway, but then this is, and I don't know, Laura Loomer is, in my opinion, unhinged enough to say something like this without being prompted. But I think this is sort of, you could say this is kind of a testing the waters of saying, let's put it, and as we know, like Jay Dyer's talked about, a lot of the technologies that come out of military, that come out of military, like what they're using in wartime, is that eventually gets turned on the population, right? We used to have, like, think about cops. I've talked a lot about cops on this show, on this channel. Think about cops. It used to be, local guys from that county or that town or whatever, walking around with revolvers. Right now they have not tanks, but like armored vehicles and automatic weapons.
Bearcats.
Yeah, exactly. So, we see how this technology, it's like, oh, well, we're using this for...
Bought with federal money, too, by the way.
Yes, absolutely. So, yeah, do you have anything on this this Laura Loomer tweet? I was appalled when I saw this.
Yeah, I mean, it's the classic, like, you create a problem and then force the solution that's prepackaged and ready to go. So, like, they created the immigration crisis, right? And then they have a solution for it. And it's like what we were saying a little earlier about using the tool, right? Where it's like, okay, well, we have this tool and we can get rid of this problem that we created that you want to get rid of, right? But the problem is, like, once you... like Laura Loomer is eager to implement that, it doesn't just stop with the tracking of the illegal aliens. It gets nationalized, kind of like everything that happened after 9/11 with the Patriot Act and the TSA and all that kind of stuff. It's like, oh yeah, we're just going to be going after terrorists. Like, just those guys and everything's fine. And it's like, no, that's not how reality works at all.
Yeah. And they're, over the last 5 years, they've been, actually probably the last 8-9 years now, they've been training the public to think that it's normal to go into a protest zone and, feel like it's organic. So what they're doing there is they set up a set of Stingray networks around the location. And a Stingray is basically a small device that mimics a cell tower, and they can see what numbers are in there. They see where they are. They can cross-reference it with Palantir if they need to. Yeah. They can know everything about everyone that's in there. They can know who's an asset and who's there organically, if you will. Everything about it. When we talk about things getting compromised, movements getting compromised, this is a great way to go about it, because what they do is they find out who are not the keyboard warriors. They find out who's willing to get out of their seat in this country and go stand up for something. It doesn't really matter what side they're on or whatever. They get to collect a whole bunch of data about it. And then you've got a large group of people who have been tagged in that system, in that database, viewable through Palantir as dissidents of some sort. We'll just use that word as a possible attribute that could be given to a group of people, right? Dissident, mobilized dissident. How about that? We could call that, I'm just wargaming a little bit here, make a mobilized dissident and a protester tag, and just put them on everybody that went there of their own will. And, boom, you've got a list. It's not about making lists anymore. It's about attributes on metadata. That's how you make a very refined list, and that's how you can profile a large group of people. So, that being the case, do we really have a right to do we still have our constitutional right to gather, considering that's what's being done?
Yeah, when the LA protests were kicking off, I was sharing some of this on Instagram of the people throwing the rocks at the ICE vehicles and whatnot. And I was like, Palantir and Oracle are going to have a field day with these people. Like they're loving this, because this is exactly the kind of thing. Because you could say, yeah, well, we're originally going to use this to find and target so-called enemy combatants. I'm like, okay, I know. We know where this stuff is going, right? But to your average person, they could say, okay, well, that's probably fine. And then they say, okay, well, we can use it on illegal immigrants, right? And a lot of people not in favor of illegal immigration. They could say, like, okay, well, that's fine. And then it's like, okay, well, then, because like we all know this, it goes in stage, because it's like, okay, well, these people who are rioting and throwing rocks at moving vehicles, which is very dangerous. These people causing a ruckus, and it's like, all right, then you can use it on those. It's like, okay, but it doesn't stop there, because I think it was in this. Let me reshare this article from Derek Bros. I think it was in this one. It might be a different one. I have so many of these where it mentions that. I think it was in a different article. Maybe he mentioned it here. I'm trying to find it, but it mentions that one of these articles. It's not that it's just tracking the people who are illegal immigrants, because then it's going to start tracking. Okay, well, who are they coming in contact with? Right? Say they work at a restaurant, like as a dishwasher or something. Okay, well, they're coming in contact with the cooks. They're coming in contact with the bartenders. They're coming in contact with the waiters. They're coming in with the waitresses, with the hosts. Whoever it is. And so it's not going to stay contained just to those people, right? Just to the illegal immigrants. And so by necessity, it's kind of like with the we see this with back during COVID, right? With the what did they call that? Where they were trying, I can't remember the term for it, but where they would try to figure out.
Oh, they had
tracing.
Contact tracing, and they used the terms. They changed the term surveillance into a medical term. So overnight, and expect this to be able to happen again. Here's yet another attribute they could put on a group of people, anti-jabby people. You could easily do that. Here, take this one. In that situation, so whatever the current thing is, and let's also not forget, Laura Loomer, that these powers will remain the next time Democrats are in place. So do you want a Democrat president to be saying, let's get Palantir on, these land rights activists or something like that?
Yeah. I mean, yeah, you can't put the genie back in the bottle. And I think the wise person will realize that whatever you create at some point on a governmental level, it'll be used against you, or it'll be under the control of the people that are adamantly against you.
Eventually.
And, so like, for instance, the first time I was on with Maddie, we were talking about the hurricane. So I live in Asheville, not trying to dox myself, but maybe I just did. But regardless, like, the FEMA response, they wouldn't, they were adamantly against conservatives. They wouldn't give the funding. They wouldn't help out. Down in Florida, they were told at the governmental higher level not to help those people. So it's like, it could be used for good, maybe, but inevitably it's going to get co-opted and used against you. Sorry to get all black-pilled.
No, you're good. You're good.
100%.
Yeah.
Let me just, I probably won't play it. There could be a copyright issue, but there's a movie out. I was talking with Bazed about it recently called Den of Thieves, and it's like a bank heist movie. And what's his face? Gerard Butler plays the main cop in that movie. And there's a scene in there where a bank robbery is taking place, and he says, I want Palantir checks on all these guys. So like,
whoa.
This is being very much normalized now, and there's a reason why it's being normalized now, because you never heard that in all your spy movies and stuff. You never heard that. It was always just, some geek goes to his computer and doodle zoom in, enhance. But now it's like you've got gritty cops going, do a Palantir check on all these guys, and that scene's on YouTube. If you look up Den of Thieves, Palantir, you all can watch it yourself or check the movie out. It's actually a recommendable movie if you like cop and robber movies.
Yeah, I heard that was a good one. I had no idea about the Palantir check, but
I didn't even catch it on the first watch. I watched it twice, and it was on the second viewing. I was like, "Wait, what?" What? I popped back 10 seconds. What did he say?
Have you all seen the movie Green Street Hooligans?
No, it's on my list, but I haven't seen it yet.
That's a really good movie, and that for people who don't know, it's about a crew of football hooligans, as they're called in the UK. It stars Elijah Wood and Charlie Hunnam. It's a really good movie. I'd say it's one of my favorites.
Is that the same director that did Hell or High Water?
I think it was actually. Let me look this up.
Have you seen that one with Jeff Bridges?
No, that one's on my list, but
Dude,
I
it's
have.
we gotta watch the ones that we haven't seen yet. I'm pretty sure it's same director, and come back and talk about it sometime because those two movies were super relevant. And I agree, one of the best movies I've ever seen. My friend Jeremy recommended it to me. Shout out to Jeremy.
It was Hell or High Water. Okay.
So good. It is so damn good. I mean, I rarely will give a movie that kind of review. It's just 5-star.
Okay, I'm gonna make a note of this so I don't forget. Because yeah, I mean, but the thing with Green Street Hooligans is there's a scene at the beginning of the movie where this group where Charlie Hunnam plays the leader of sorts of this crew of hooligans, and it shows them kind of like as almost if you're watching. They're like going through, I think what they call the metro station or whatever it is, and they're showing, or the tube, I think it's what they call it in London. But anyway, it's showing like from a security camera view, and they have these not readouts, but it's like these sort of circles around like everybody's heads, and it's showing who these people are, and it's basically showing it's if you're watching and seeing, okay, these people are a threat, right? Like this guy who's just going to work, whatever, is green, and then these guys who go out and get in fist fights outside of football stadiums, like these guys have the red, or they're like a higher threat. So it's very it's a very very interesting movie.
I'm gonna check it out. I loved Hell or High Water so much. I'm definitely gonna check that out.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. I think I stopped. Let me see if there's anything else in this one. Okay, real quick. Let me reshare here. Because this is also, so we all know about Doge, and I will admit I didn't follow the Doge thing as closely as I probably should have. But I know that they got into a lot of data, and they were given access, I think even by the Supreme Court, to certain amounts of data. And that was one of the things people have been talking about is when you have this data, like the IRS has this data, the NSA has this data, the whoever, NIH, whatever it is, has this data on people. But this is basically what they're doing is taking all this data and then compiling it into one place so that they have a complete profile on everybody. And so then there's this section here with the IRS. In early April, it was reported that Palantir was working with Elon Musk's Department of Government Efficiency to build a new mega API for accessing IRS records. The relationship between Palantir and Doge was first reported by Wired. As Wired notes, APIs are application programming interfaces which allow different applications to exchange data. It is speculated the Palantir API could be used to move IRS data to a cloud for direct access. The report states that Palantir and Doge held a hackathon with dozens of career IRS engineers to collaborate on building a single API layer above all IRS databases. And so it goes on from there. But I mean, this I think is the thing with Doge is it was supposed to, and I thought this was crap from the beginning when we can cut 2 or 3 trillion, whatever it was, out of the budget. And then as soon as it became, I don't believe that to begin with, but then as soon as it became clear that they weren't going after the Pentagon, I was like, okay, well now we really know what's going on here. And then when then it became clear that no, what Elon Musk is doing is just trying to dismantle any agencies that can regulate anything that him and his friends are doing to try to get rid of, like the CFPB, for example, and the FDIC. And so they're trying to get rid of those agencies. And then also it became clear, this is a data gathering operation. Like that's exactly what's going on. Did y'all follow the Doge thing closely? Do you have any further insight on that?
I mean, I think it's just, like what we've discussed already, it's a distraction. So, that project was a distraction, right? They said, we're going to get rid of a couple $1 trillion, maybe a couple billion max, right? So there was an alternative or an ulterior motive to that. And I think it's the same way that we were talking about earlier about distractions and things. You know, the labels of Democrat, Republican, all these capitalist, socialist, all these labels are just distractions. It's a technocracy. That's the goal. That's the point. That's what they're trying to build towards.
Yep. And you can't have I can't have the Klaus Schwabian dream without the technocracy. You can't have the pandemic industrial complex without the technocracy. You can't have a Green New Deal without the technocracy. You can't have any of that. And conversely, you can't have a free society. You can't have an American Constitution and Bill of Rights if you have a technocracy. They're mutually exclusive. You can't have all of them at once. And the only way to get people to slouch into it is to do exactly what we're seeing right now, to dumb everybody down over generations, polarize them politically, destabilize the nuclear family, destabilize the currency, destabilize male-female relationships, upend
Poison the food.
Yeah, poison the food, poison the water, poison the air, poison the ground, upend religion, install nihilism and pornography addiction. I mean, the whole tapestry is there of like creating a dumbed down, fat, messed up, emotionally bankrupt society of people who can't fight for themselves, and then give them a set of circumstances that force them to adopt these new ways. And it's going to be full of shiny toys at first. Life's already full of shiny toys. We have streaming media. We've got this. We've got Xbox. We've got, FLAC files to listen to and vinyl records to listen to and 40 Marvel movies to watch. It's just like, this is the time. This is the society that you need to destroy American values.
It's the distraction.
100%.
Yeah, and I mean it's kind of because I think about there's a great band called the 1975. If Henley's still in the chat, he'll know. He's a fan.
I know those guys.
A great band.
Good.
I've seen them live a couple of times.
Right.
Really good show. But they have this song called "People," and there's a line in there that says it's like, I want girls, food, gear meaning being British slang for cocaine, was I don't like going outside, so bring me everything here. And it's like, that's kind of, where, and I think the line, I think it's pretty obviously a tongue-in-cheek, ironic line, because it's like that, we've reached that point where you don't have to leave your house. You can get a remote job. I mean, remote jobs are not easy to get, but theoretically, like someone can get one. Yeah. They can have their groceries delivered. They can have their food delivered. I mean, you can even get drink, like if you want like sweet tea, like you can just go to put it in order on Uber Eats or whatever, and someone will bring you a large sweet tea. So it's like someone could theoretically live his or her life these days without ever leaving the house.
It goes back to the Howard Stern.
Yeah, exactly.
They want a whole nation of Howard Sterns.
Sage broadcaster, pioneer in social distancing.
So I know, Hesher, you had some things that you wanted to pull up, and Daniel, if you have anything you want to pull up for the screen, we can definitely get into that. A lot of the articles I found, I'm going to link all these in the description. A lot of them are just really, really long. And I've been reading these. I've done quite a bit of reading over the last few days, and so they're worth looking at if people in the audience are interested. But yeah, definitely, if y'all have anything, I'd definitely like to get it up on the screen and talk through it.
Let's take a couple Alex Karp clips then, because it's important to know who's behind this company, I think.
Okay.
There is an ideology there, for those that would argue it's just a tool, it's just a company, leave them alone, they're Britney Spears. There is an ideology behind it, so I've got it down there in the share nest.
Okay. Have you seen that clip of him? And I saw it a while back on Instagram, and I can't remember the exact context, but where he was talking to Alex Karp was talking to Stanley Druckenmiller, who was one of who's sort of George Soros's right-hand man, who also, just quick side note, nobody has been able to explain to me why, all the MAGA people who George Soros is public enemy number one to these people, and where, if you believe the reports, Trump tasked Larry Fink, who runs BlackRock, with finding him a Treasury secretary, and he chose Scott Bessent, who was also one of Soros's top guys, and nobody has a word to say about it. It's like just whatever, everybody just kind of goes along. It's like y'all hate this guy. He's like the most evil person in the world, and then you have another guy who's like a major enemy. MAGA sees a major enemy, Larry Fink, who's then choosing Scott Bessent, who's a Soros guy through and through, and nothing. You won't hear a word about it.
No. I mean, what can you say? That is the revolving, disgusting door that is our government. I mean, we expect it at this point. It's gross. I had to see a picture of Huma Abedin and Soros's spawn, whatever his name is, Alex or whatever. Yeah, Alex. Oh God, that's just so gross seeing those two like creepy ghoul people. Who wants Anthony Weiner's sloppy seconds? That's just disgusting.
There was okay. Real quick, this is where I was going with this. Is I just thought, I'm not going to play the clip. I just thought it was a very bizarre thing to say when he was talking to Alex Karp was talking to Stanley Druckenmiller on stage somewhere. And he said, the interaction followed recent characterizations of Palantir as a cult stock by CNBC's Jim Cramer, who grouped it with Tesla and Netflix. And then Karp said, talking about this, a cult where I get no sexual benefits, by the way. Just to be clear, it's a rare cult with no sex and very little drugs, and we're not poisoning anyone.
Okay,
and Stanley Druckenmiller was just like, okay, Alex, thanks for that. You could tell he was like, what? But I just thought that's a very odd thing to say.
Yeah, coming from a Burning Man alumni. Okay.
Right. Okay, let me get this in the doc here so I can add that one, and then I'll go ahead and pull this up.
All right, let's see. Which one is this? We'll find out.
Americans are the most loving, God-fearing, fair, least discriminatory people on the planet. And they want to know that if you're waking up and thinking about harming American citizens, or if American citizens are taken hostage and kept in dungeons, or if you're a foreign power sending fentanyl to poison our people, something really bad is going to happen to you and your friends and your cousins and your bank account and your mistress and whoever was involved. And when Americans are spending $1 trillion on defense, what I want and what I think my peers want is, why are these people keeping our citizens hostage, torturing our people, attacking our allies, maligning us in what was once called the United Nations, basically a discriminatory institution against anything good? We need to stand up, and those people need to be scared. And that's why this conference is so important, because we have the best products in the world, and we cannot have parity. Our adversaries do not have our moral compunction. If it's even, they will take advantage of our niceness, kindness, our desire to be at home in Nebraska or New Hampshire or wherever we live in our peaceful environments. And they need to wake up scared and go to bed scared. And if you give that to the American people will go back and say, and honestly, probably shouldn't say this is why I thought the Democrats were going to lose the election, why they did, because people want to live in peace. They want to go home. They do not want to hear your woke pagan ideology. They want to know they're safe. And safe means that the other person is scared. That's how you make someone safe. And the average American person understands this. Unfortunately, many of the intellectually captured institutions, funneled and intellectually owned by the Berkeley faculty, do not. And that's what they want. But sure as hell what I want. And that's what Palantir and all the people in this room, I hope, we're here to serve the American people. And my version of service is the soldiers are happier, the enemies are scared, and Americans go back to enjoying the fact that we're the only one with a real tech scene in this country, and we're going to win everything.
Okay, what I'm taking away from this word salad that he just spewed here is that It's funny to hear somebody talk about, I don't know if he used the term morality, but there's something to that effect, where he's also talking about how, oh yeah, if you do something that we don't like we're going to take out your bank account, we're going to take out your family, your brothers, your sisters, your mom, your dad, your cousins, your friends.
Mistress?
Yeah, your mistress. It's like, that's a odd one to throw in.
Yeah,
I mean,
right? I find that really odd.
That was just a very weird, and he's basically what he's saying is, effectively what he's doing there is he's just saying that the company line, and company line meaning sort of the way people talk about the U.S. military is sort of a rule by fear, is that people don't mess with us because we have the most powerful military in the world, and could turn any country into glass within a few hours, right? But it's like saying, oh yeah, because we're out there, and it's like, it doesn't matter if somebody does something bad, and then we go wipe out all of their family and their social circle and debank them, as long as the guy who's working as a welder in Nebraska can go home and sleep safely at night. Like, who cares what the collateral damage is against the enemies that they are proposing the U.S. has.
Yeah, I mean, that was a lot of word salad, and it's hard for me to believe any of the coherent parts that I understood. Like, I don't really think that man has maybe a shared morality that I do, or can make a justification for what is moral. It seems to me that there was a lot of placation, saying things to the audience to kind of get them on board, but it doesn't seem very sincere or authentic. I'll put it that way.
Yeah. Well, like, he's basically saying, my mistress is safe. She's not going to get doxxed, but yours is, because I have better software.
Ooh, that's grim.
Yeah, right. And what's with the like barroom bro like body language there? He looked like he was about to pop out of his skin.
Yeah, that's the guy who just came back from the bathroom at the bar, and kind of like rubbing his nose. That was sort of what on a Saturday night, like that's what I was getting from that.
I saw a clip of him. He was giving a talk somewhere, and a protester interrupted his speech. She was like a Palestinian lady. And she was saying, hey, your technology is killing my people and my family. And his response was just to laugh.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay. There,
Yeah, he laughs at her and corrects her about what's happening there, as though he's been there, as though he has family there or something.
Yeah.
Yeah, and now I'm trying to remember who I saw this on. I think it was on I meant to pull this up and I forgot to do it, but I think it was a clip from a Due Dissidence segment where they had this guy that they showed who was talking about Code Pink, right? The anti-war protesters, who I would certainly have many points of disagreement with, but I would certainly be on board with them in being staunchly anti-war. And that he was, and this guy was saying, like, oh yeah, we need to designate these people as a terrorist organization. Like, we went on Fox Business and just openly said, and I can't remember who it was, and I wish I would have pulled the clip up, but if I can find that clip, I'll put it in the.
I was looking for that same clip, Maddie. I saw that same episode. They did a good job with their clips on that episode.
Yeah, it was really good. They're more well prepared than I am, but. Yeah, it was. I was like, that's scary. That and that's kind of where things are going. And as soon as you declare somebody a terrorist, they basically lose any and all rights. I mean, just think about Gitmo and Abu Ghraib and what happened with those people.
The gift of the Patriot Act.
Yeah, or like flightless. Like,
oh yeah,
I have a close name to this other guy that you banned, but it flags you.
Right. So like, let me, that spurs something in my memory there, Daniel. Let me remind everybody that for 4 straight years, the TSA and the Flight Authority and the Air Marshals, all they did was follow Americans around, hundreds of Americans who happened to be in Washington, D.C. on January 6th. They literally did that with something maybe like Palantir, maybe Palantir itself helped them put attributes on all those flyers and then tag them as people to be followed, to be gang stalked by government agents for no reason. Some of these people were just going there to attend a funeral. Some were going there to attend a work conference, and they all get followed everywhere. While the border's totally open and while flights are coming in with 150 illegal immigrants on them. That's what the air marshals were doing. They were following those people around for years. And now and conservatives complained about that a lot, rightfully, but now they're calling for Palantir to, go out and categorize, their political enemies. And it's just like, do people not see the pendulum swinging here and the power growing? I mean, the pendulum gets closer to us, tied down on the table every freaking time the administration flips, because the next administration comes in and they have all the powers that the previous one collected.
Exactly. Yep. That's a good point.
All right. I got another clip here. You want to roll this one?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, here we go.
Look, we built PG, which single-handedly stopped the rise of the far right in Europe. We built Foundry, which was used to distribute the COVID vaccine and saved millions of lives globally. We built what we call multi-constellation, and what's often called the digital kill chain. And they're category-defining products. So when you deliver these products to the market, just honestly, people say this isn't going to exist, this isn't valuable, but then it changes the market. And then the market is the Palantir market. Now, that doesn't mean everyone in the world is going to buy our product, but it means most of the sensible people in the world are going to buy from the category we defined. Look, we built PG, which single-handedly.
So he's talking about particular products that they've built and how they're employed. And notice he says that he's taking responsibility for tamping down the extreme right in Europe, whatever that means. I'm not sure what he's referring to there specifically, but, the
people that don't want immigrants flooding into their countries.
Yeah, he's an open borders guy, that's for sure. And then bragging about distributing COVID vaccines. Some people would argue about that, I would wager.
Yeah. Not the W he thinks it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there was something I had on that I thought having to do with. God, I got so many of these articles. Let's see if I can find it. It was actually not a due dissonance. They might have talked about it, but I found the clip I was looking for, that Fox Business clip. It was from Max Blumenthal, who we're also big fans of the Gray Zone over here. He went to the AI Expo, I think it was in DC or wherever it was, somewhere on the East Coast, and he was kicked out for asking questions that were not popular with some of the speakers. And I think he actually got he got kicked out. And let me see if I can. Let me pull this up real quick and play it, because the editorializing they did on this is that Fox Business did. Let's see.
Expo to Fox News to call for the U.S. government to designate Code Pink and other chief lobbyist on Capitol.
We're on the right path.
Well, earlier in the day, the anti-war group Code Pink interrupted a discussion between the Secretary of the Navy, John Phelan, and Palantir's chief lobbyist on Capitol Hill, former Congressman Mike Gallagher. Palantir's Gallagher went straight from the AI Expo to Fox News to call for the U.S. government to designate Code Pink and other anti-war groups as domestic terrorists.
Of ideas. So these people are both incredibly uninformed, they're brainwashed, but now they've become something much more, which is a dangerous movement, a domestic terrorist movement. We must use all legal mechanisms at our disposal to prevent people from being harmed. And I think politicians on the left, on the right, everywhere in between can come together around that basic, very fundamental American fact.
So, I mean, what's troubling about, and the editorializing was saying, if you look, it said that AI Expo interrupted by pro-Palestinian twits, and it's like, this is ostensibly a news show, And that's how they're characterizing these people who are protesting, which, is an American right. And then this guy's like, oh, yeah, we have to deal with these people who are exercising their rights as Americans. We then have to use, as Americans, we have to use whatever legal means. And of course, he has to say that on TV, but it's not like the, government is opposed to using, so we say, extra legal means on dealing with people and groups that they see as a problem.
Yeah, well, it illustrates Hesher's point perfectly with the pendulum swinging, right? So on the left, Code Pink is now a terrorist organization. And then a few years ago under Biden, when the parents were protesting at their school PTA meetings about the books that the kids had, and they were protesting about like the LGBTQ infiltration in their schools, they were deemed domestic terrorists. I think that perfectly illustrates Hesher's point about the pendulum swinging. It's just like what you create or what you set as a standard will inevitably be used to the opposite side at some point.
Yeah, it's also like Palantir's version of Gawker. You got outed on live television, and all of a sudden you want to except now, instead of crushing their business, they're going to have the U.S. government designate them a terror group. I mean, that's actually really freaking frightening.
Yeah, and yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I mean it is really scary in that you have this guy who feels comfortable going on national television
and saying that,
and with no evidence, he's just asserting that these people are misinformed and they're brainwashed. Oh, and by the way, they're domestic terrorists, and we need to deal with these people. And effectively, what he's saying there is like they want to Gitmo those people. Like that's effectively where he's going with it. Of course, he can't come out and say that.
Yeah.
But I would, respect isn't the right word, but I would almost have some level of regard for these people if they would just be honest and just come out and be like, yeah, we're going to take these Code Pink people and, send them off to Gitmo or Abu Ghraib or whatever. Like, I was like, at least they're being honest.
Yeah, you got to give it to the left. That's one thing they're good at. They just operate in plain sight. The right has now figured out how to run on social narratives and social media and shit posting and meme lording and podcast circuiting and stuff. Like they really, I gotta give it up to the conservatives and the Republican Party in general, the GOP, like whoever they hired to do their PR and their narrative work with all the cabinet people, up to 2 years in advance. I think, when I look back, I see a lot of these narratives being built in 2022, right after the midterm elections. And they've really done it. They've really pulled a lot of people into the identity politic and whenever Trump does something that doesn't seem America first-ish, they just chalk it up to, like it's 3D chess. So, if he wants to make a 3D database, a Palantir Seeing Stone database that looks at everything we do, and he wants to buddy up with Elon Musk, who's got 14 baby mamas, and expect conservatives to be like, yeah, that's cool. That's a cool moral that he's got there, or I'll accept it because he's strange and brilliant. It's just like there's all these excuses that people make for themselves right now, while World War III is potentially en route.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely, and the latest cope, if you want to call it that, I've been seeing from a lot of, and look, I'm not just here to beat up on the Trump supporters. I don't want it to come across that way, but I mean, it's kind of like it's hard to have patience with a lot of these people because, like, when the Real ID thing was happening, when that was kind of in the news several weeks ago, and people were saying, "Oh, it's like okay, he's going ahead with it and enforcing it." And people were like, "Oh, well, that's supposed to have been happening since 2005." That's like, so what? Like, if he was actually opposed to this, why would he put a stop to it, right? And then when people have been pointing out all the problems with, his new friendships with, like, Elon Musk, though I guess that's kind of over now, and Larry Ellison and, Alex Karp and Mark Zuckerberg and Jeff Bezos and some of these people, with this whole surveillance state, all of a sudden now it's, oh, well, this was going to happen anyway. It's like, okay, so he just keeps giving these people huge contracts, invites them to the White House to speak in an official capacity at a press conference. I mean, he's courting OpenAI, right? Sam Altman. Don't if y'all really want to read, and I'm not saying he's guilty of this, but if you're weak stomachs, maybe don't do it. But it's worth, if you really want to see what's maybe this guy is up to, go read about Sam Altman's relationship with his sister. That's we're not going to get into that because that's dark and gross. But
another company that preemptively took out their ethics team, OpenAI, they said they were going to get rid of Sam Altman. They did get rid of him for a few days. Then he came back. Then the ethics team was dissolved. And that's kind of odd in hindsight, right after the BBB.
Yes, and I didn't know that. So was he removed as CEO just while they got rid of the ethics team?
They tried to remove him, and the members in the company revolted, and he came back. And then after he came back is when the ethics team was dissolved.
Okay, so it was after he came back. Interesting. I didn't even know about that.
If I remember the timeline properly, I'm going by memory. It's foggy.
All right. Let's see. Is this? Oh yeah, this is a different one.
Yeah, this is obviously from the Economic Club of Chicago. Let's see what he had to say here.
But what advice would you give today's teenagers, young people, around the skills they need to develop, things they need to acquire to be successful in this crazy environment that we live in?
Find the thing you're uniquely good at, and
OnlyFans.
and then actually, I think, and then make sure your whole life is organized around allowing you to do it. And so I manage essentially young people, and for the last 20 years, and I would say failure one is not willing to accept what they're actually good at. It may not be what you want to be good at. Not organizing your life around that ability. I tell the people who come to Palantir, I've never met someone really successful who had a great social life at 20. If that's what you want, that's great, but you're not going to be successful, and don't blame anyone else. So, it's like, you see, there's like, and the other thing about that is like, you have to be somewhat honest when you're doing your partner selection. Like, if your goal is to advance your aptitude, which should be it should be focus on your aptitude and focus on your freedom and happiness, which are directly correlated. Because if you're doing something you're really good at, no one really cares what you wear to work. But, and then I ask people.
I didn't realize this was going to be life advice, but we'll roll with it. Maybe he'll make a point here in all this salad.
All the time, they're like, oh, I met someone I really like. They're like, well, what do you like about him, her? And they're like, the rest, oh, they went to this school. And I was like, okay, great. And what else do you like? Well, they went to that school. And I'm like, and what else do you like? Well, their brother's really interesting. Their sister's really interesting. It's like, well, what about the like and like? Like, do you like them? Do they like you? How are they going to feel when you dedicate the next 10 years of your life to building what you think is valuable? And if, and this is like, you will not succeed. And if you're very talented, and most people have something that they're talented at and enjoy.
Did his Neuralink glitch? All right, I'm gonna eject this one. This one's not very good.
Well, to be fair, I do think some of what he's saying is actually good advice. Like finding something you're good at, and if you want to be successful, like dedicating yourself to that, to getting really good at it. The part about the social life, I think he's talking about himself not having a social life at 20, because look, there are a lot of people. The tech bro thing is interesting because when you look at people like if you go back to the 80s, right, you look at like the Wall Street guys, right, like Michael Milken, Ivan Boesky, like people like that, sort of the corporate raiders like T. Boone Pickens. Like these guys were, and even a lot of people like in modern day finance, like Warren Buffett, Larry Fink, whoever it is. Like these guys, they have to, they can't. there's sort of a charisma there, and there's sort of a, they come across well on TV. They're well spoken. They're intelligent. And the tech, because I think that is an aspect of being, successful, is being likable, being able to communicate with people. But then they kind of threw all that out the window. I mean, that still exists, but what I'm saying is kind of when the tech thing, when you had people like Elon Musk, who we were talking about earlier, who can barely form a coherent sentence. When you have Mark Zuckerberg, who is, like a dork, like let's be real, and a lot of these guys who then like you had like Steve. So I think a lot of it started with Steve Jobs, where it's like the guy who wears the black turtleneck every day, and Mark Zuckerberg walking around in like baggy jeans and in a hoodie, and it's kind of like they threw out all the rules. And so anyway, I say all that to say that I think that there is something to that, of like how the tech, it's almost like these guys are intended to be as weird and off-putting and unlikable and still be successful. Does that make sense? I was kind of a rambling.
It makes
point.
sense. I think I have a different point of view. I don't, not to get all Jordan Peterson, and like, it depends on what you mean by success. And the way that he's framing success is to, give up all of your social life, all these other non-materialistic things, and focus on becoming a cog to the machine. And then maybe, you can push hard enough and acquire, some sort of status or material wealth. And to me, just at least from where I'm coming from, that seems like it's, I can see the validity and why that's important, but I also don't think that's like the whole point to existence, is to create an identity based on the work that you do for some guy or some corporation or whatever that doesn't really care about you. I don't know. It struck me as like kind of, at least from my like Orthodox Christian standpoint, kind of missing the point.
Right. It feels sort of disingenuous coming from a guy who was just talking about, deplatforming people and destroying people and, setting up artificially intelligent missile systems to, classify groups of people and then murder them, with great explosive force. So it kind of comes off to me like any CEO, these douchey CEO types, no offense to any cool CEOs out there, but these douchey tech CEO bro types, like they have to have the stupid haircut. They have to have the tech guru sort of personality. And I think there's probably a reading list. I think there's probably a Steve Jobs reading list, that like begins with how to win friends and influence people and goes into a whole bunch of psychology and stuff like that, and a whole bunch of self-realization and self-help, sort of techniques and tactics. And that's what any cult leader does, pretty much. It's the same reading list. You can take that knowledge and use it for good, or you can take that knowledge and use it, in this guy's case, to continuously acquire wealth and power. And that's what he's talking about here. He's using sort of like Jordan Peterson-esque language, the clean your room sort of language to convey it. And it falls deaf on my ears, because I know what this guy's doing and I know what his philosophy is.
Yeah. It kind of makes a parallel with like, the rock musician, right? So it's like, get in the band, become the biggest band you can, go all the way. And all those guys end up just miserable people, divorced, super depressed, and it's like, it feels to me, it's like the same thing that Alex Karp was pushing is in the same way, same vein, where it's like, focus on these things to be quote unquote successful, but it's really not what success is at the end of the day.
Yeah.
Very good points.
He's made a couple mentions about military stuff too. If you could throw, this is just a headline I have up here. If you could just share this real quickly. This is out of Fortune Mag here. The U.S. will very likely fight a 3-front war against Russia, China, and Iran, Palantir's Alex Karp says. Why is Alex Karp saying this? And maybe more importantly, why is this happening? This is out of datacenterdynamics.com. U.S. Army Reserve swears in tech leaders from Palantir, Meta, OpenAI, and Thinking Machines. This just came out today. U.S. Army established a new group to help bring in big tech and the military to work closely together. So they are swearing tech oligarchs and tech employees in as lieutenant colonels. All right. So Shyam Sankar, the CTO of Palantir, can you believe this, is being sworn in as a lieutenant colonel. Are you kidding me? And then you've got Andrew Bosworth, CTO of Meta, Kevin Wheel, Chief Product Officer at OpenAI, Bob McGrew, advisor at Thinking Machines, and former chief of research at OpenAI. So why, like we're supposed to think these are twits that are complaining and saying, hey, you're killing my people with your technology. And the news comes on and calls them twits. And then they platform some guy from Palantir to say those people should be designated as terrorists. And then all at the same time in the background, we've got Shyam Sankar, CTO at Palantir, all those other people I mentioned being literally sworn into our military as lieutenant colonels. Do they go to boot camp? Just asking for my friends who had to go to boot camp to, get to lieutenant colonel. They would be curious. But what's up with that, you guys?
Well, I know all those companies that Peter Thiel has some sort of relationship with all of those companies, with maybe the exception of Thinking Machines.
And that's a new one to me too, Daniel. I'm familiar with most of these companies and what they do, but Thinking Machines, because there's always kind of been this like divide, right? There's been this like sort of like, oh, these people do AI, and Boston Dynamics, never mind, they were just bought by Hyundai, who can produce cars in mass quantity. Never mind any of that. They produce robotics. Like robotics and AI are still very like, we're as the public, I think, supposed to think that they're very separate, but Thinking Machines sounds like the company that might be the missing link there that puts the AI in the, the robot.
Yeah, the robot dogs in the military industrial complex, and the AI, was it Anadril is another company I think Thiel's involved with, and that's more of like the weapons and munitions, but it's linking that component of the military industrial complex and linking it into the AI systems.
Yeah, makes
so
sense.
I would assume that Thinking Machines probably, it sounds like, and I could be completely wrong, but it sounds like it has something to do with it.
Yeah, so I looked up Thinking Machines, which I was not familiar with. And initially, I thought it was this, because there's two Thinking Machines that came up. There's one that came up under, it's a company that's out of business. And I realized it's not that company. It's a different one. It's just a company with the same name. But it is interesting, just worth noting, that the Thinking Machines Corporation that went out of business in 1994, it came out of, so they made the most powerful supercomputers of the time back in the 80s and 90s. They looked like headquartered close to the MIT AI lab. They went bankrupt in 94, but its hardware and parallel computing software divisions were acquired in time by Sun Microsystems. Sun Microsystems, which was acquired, I guess, in 2010 by Oracle. So just an interesting connection there.
Perfect example of what I was talking about earlier, that company absorbs anything that can compete with them. And Sun Microsystems was a big company.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I'm just looking at the Wikipedia here. I don't want to go too deep into this because this company's out of business, but I think that it's still worth mentioning. It says that DARPA's connection machines were decommissioned by 1996. So I guess they made computers for DARPA. They were also, I didn't catch this, but they were also mentioned in Jurassic Park, Mission Impossible, 1996, Tom Clancy's Rainbow Six game, and then Fallout 3.
Wow.
So that's quite a bit of media to end up. But the Thinking Machines Lab, I'll throw this link in the description later for people who want to read about this. This is a company, it doesn't look like there's very much information out there about it, but it is interesting that if you just look at some of the headlines on their website, so we are scientists, engineers, and builders who have created some of the most widely used AI products, including ChatGPT and Character.ai, open weights models like Mistral, as well as popular open source projects like PyTorch, OpenAI Gym, FairSec, and Segment Anything. So they have an emphasis on human AI collaboration. And anyway, yeah, I don't want to get too deep into that, but that is something very interesting company to keep an eye on.
Yeah, you could go deep on every single one of them, I'm guessing, all the way back to their founding. This one's short. This is only 15 seconds. Let's see what Crazy Hair Karp has to say this time.
Palantir is here to disrupt and make the institutions we partner with the very best in the world, and when it's necessary, to scare enemies and on occasion kill them.
Okay, there you go.
So he just comes right out. I mean, at least he's honest. He just comes right out and says it.
Yeah.
That this is designed to kill people.
Yeah, but don't worry. We're just a private company providing software so you can help you view your database. Don't worry.
Trust us. There's no way we can use this in a bad way at all.
We're from the government. Trust us, right?
Exactly.
Brandon Smith says, Lieutenant Colonel Tech Broski. Trust us. We are Lieutenant Colonel Tech Broski.
Yeah, that's pretty. Lieutenant Colonel Tech Broski. That's pretty good. Yeah, and I think kind of going back to with the tech bros being sort of the antithesis in a lot of ways, kind of the titans of industry of, if you go back to the Rockefellers and, the Morgans and JP Morgan and the Vanderbilts and all of that. But then it's sort of jarring to see this kind of, Alex Karp's kind of a goofball and this goofy guy, and he's just up there all smiling and, hair all over the place, and he looks sort of disarming. But he's just very candid, almost in a cheerful way, saying "Oh yeah, this product is designed to kill people."
Yeah, it feels like, maybe I'm over my skis here, but it's the new money is the Silicon Valley group, and it feels like they're the shadow oligarchy, the ones that have the keys to the kingdom, that are putting the people in government in place to carry out their agenda. And I think, from what I've seen of any of these people, it would be very hard for me to trust any of them and trust their intentions, whether it's inevitable or not, right? We're going to do this anyways. And it's okay, well, regardless if it was always going to happen or if someone else would do the things that they're doing, I still don't trust them, and I think that they're probably the ones are a part of the group that are really controlling things and have more of the power.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that's the thing with technocracy. I don't know if you guys have ever played any of Sid Meier's video game Civilization, but it's you kind of have this God view over a old archaic society, and you kind of set up their crops and set up their birth rate, and then other towns start building up around them and humans start warring, and it's all sticks and stones, and it's as the game moves forward, it moves at a 1 by 100 time frame or something like that, and eventually you have this big society, and it's rocket ships going into space all the time, and it does feel, and unfortunately only mythology that we have outside of the ancient mythologies for our times are science fiction, and all the science fiction has, really war gamed out the whole AI thing. They've really put it out there in every way, shape, or form, from Battlestar Galactica to Mrs. Davis, and it does feel like it's inevitable, like we humankind, or any species like us, reach a certain level of computing ubiquity and infinite and control over the genome, or at least what they think is control over the genome, and start messing with it. Maybe this is all destined to happen, but it's like we've been warned about it all these years. We know better. We have other means of doing religion and spirituality that worked for thousands of years that we can go back to. We've got all these options. We've got we've got thousands of years of philosophy and theology and all the innovations. Like, we have all the tools that we need to not let technocracy happen and destroy us. Yet someone or someone's out there in the Star Chamber or whatever, under the Vatican, I don't know where the hell they are, in the hellfire tunnels under London, perhaps, I don't know, under the synagogue in Brooklyn, who knows, are trying to make this happen. It's like you got technocrats trying to make technocratic dystopia happen at the same time as you have insane religious people in the Middle East, political Zionists in particular, who are trying to force biblical events to happen. And it's like, no one asked us. No one voted for this. Like, the planet Earth did not get to vote on, hey, would you like to be a technocratic dystopia where AI rules everything unhinged? Or would you like us to push us into Revelations? It's in a lot of these holy books. Maybe we just, nudge some wars. We can rebuild temples and, slaughter calves and all this stuff. It's like, who voted for this? Who wants this? As our friend Oddman Out says, their order is not our order. This is insanity.
Agreed. Yeah, but I think it's it's a good example of the hubris of mankind. Where we have, like, Aleister Crowley, Isaac Weishaupt and Jamie Hanshaw have talked about this extensively about, Aleister Crowley sort of looked at the Book of Revelation coming up in the, Plymouth Brethren, as being this sort of apocalyptic. He kind of inverted it and, was kind of like, oh, let's try to bring about the end of the world, right? But then you have people sort of, I would argue, really on the same side, in the same spiritual side, in the grand scheme of things, who also are trying to, it's like, oh yeah, let's try to trick God into, we're going to try to force his hand so that we can bring about the end of the world. These are people in powerful positions of government and in positions of influence and power, who think that by trying to force these events that they, you can read about in Revelation, that like, oh, we have to breed this, red cow, and it's like, this is totally insane. And it's like, a lot of people they just don't know about this. They're totally clueless of what these people are trying to do. Just that level of arrogance and hubris that, we know when the world should end, not God. It's like, this is our decision, and we're going to try to force his hand and make that happen. It's totally just unbelievably insane.
They're trying to reconstruct. They're trying to become gods themselves, right? And it's the amount of pride that goes with it, without living in accordance to God, that gets someone spiritually bankrupt enough to consider these kinds of ideas, and then to implement them, and then to structure entire societies around these things, right? And so it's, from my perspective, it's not a shock at all, the state of things, that a society that gets further away from Christ, the traditions that he left us, are at a position where they have to fend for themselves and recreate it. and whatever they're going to create is never going to be, it can't be on par with, in my opinion, what God has given us. And so it's very anti-Christ, in replace of Christ, not like, some horned devil character, but like they're just, it's like they say, we don't need you, God, we're going to do it on our own. And we have like, centuries of history and all the devastation that it's brought from, this worldview being in power. And I mean, obviously, like, yeah, I don't want to go too down into the ortho rabbit hole, but it makes sense to me in a certain way.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I can understand if you don't believe in God and you're a materialist or a technocrat, you're going to you fear death. And so what are you going to do? You're going to build some sort of machine or come up with some sort of chemical, elixir that's going to make you live forever, right? Like, that seems like that's one of the technocratic end goals, is to be able to recreate immortality, right? And obviously it's destined to be a disaster. It's like trying to create a utopia here on Earth. From my perspective, like, there, you can either be someone who thinks utopia is possible or someone who's waiting for paradise. That utopia is after and in the next life. And those two worldviews are at odds with each other.
Yeah.
But it just seems like a lot of utopianism, like, oh, well, we can just kind of bypass God's laws and all these things and just do it ourselves. And it's like, it never ends well. I'll just put it that way.
My colleague and good friend, Corey Drayton, the Wandering Wolf from the Boiler Room, once told me that utopia literally translates to oblivion. So, and that does seem to be the end point of all utopian worldviews, is something that is actually destructive, because one's utopia, my utopia, may not be the same as my neighbor's utopia. and the utopia that those that have power, influence, and money have, and agendas, most definitely is not anywhere near any of our visions of what utopia might be.
And I think, if I'm correct, that I was just going to say that utopia means no place. It's impossible. It's a pipe dream. It's something that can't happen. So what you get is dystopia.
Yes.
And that's all of these different threads that are being connected. It's all going to end in dystopia. We're already in it now. Mm-hmm. I think, people are waking up and being like, the way things are going isn't right. In that natural sense, I think it's kind of like, it says that God writes everything on our heart. And it's like, I think even if people aren't religious, they still have that sense, like, this is all just a mess, and it's only going to get more and more messy. And I'm not sure if we're able to put this genie back in the bottle, so to speak.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely going to be difficult, and I mean, I don't know how you come back from a lot of this. And I just had an article pulled up. It was an article from Reason, where it was talking about how Palantir is helping, like, implement the surveillance state, police state, and it reminded me, and I'd forgotten about this, at least a couple years ago. Trump was talking about, because his whole thing was build the wall in 2016, and that was wildly popular with a lot of people. And then he started pivoting at some point to start saying, "Oh, it's going to be like a digital, like an electronic kind of wall." And I didn't think to mention that earlier, but I think that's not like that shows that there's at least some knowledge, right? And that's kind of what we have now, like with the Palantir system, tracking, immigrants. Like, is this the electronic kind of border wall that he was talking about? And yeah, I mean, I don't think it can be overstated that we see this. This is a bipartisan technology that is used across different administrations, right? So like what we had with with administrations, like with the Patriot Act, right? That was kind of the first. I mean, it goes back further than this, but that was kind of like the first thing where really they rolled out sort of the open surveillance state. And then eventually, I think it was 2012, was the National Defense Authorization Act, where Obama signed into law that they could detain people without charges, without
due
cause,
process,
without anything, without due process for forever, for as long as they wanted to. And so, and you see that. So George W. Bush, his administration, it was rolled out in his administration. Obama then had 2 terms, took on that, built on it. Then you had, I don't know as much about Trump's first administration with a lot of this. I'm sure that there was a lot of things happening. I haven't brushed up on that. But then, we saw with Biden's term, with him giving massive hundred contracts worth hundreds of millions of dollars to Palantir. And we saw that basically like the FBI was running the social media companies, right? Anything the FBI said, hey, take this down, they would do it.
Yeah.
So and then with any of this stuff. So if you and let's say for the sake of discussion, under Trump, they do just have it for illegal immigrants, right? The tracking. But then, I mean, do you think whoever comes next is going to leave it there, especially if it's JD Vance? I mean, it's going to be total, like top to bottom, complete surveillance state. Larry Ellison, Peter Thiel, Alex Karp, these people, Sam Altman, right, Masayoshi Son, like these people are going to get everything they want, and I think it's and if it's a Democrat, then I mean, of course, like it's not going to be any better. So not to belabor the point, but I think that's something that we can't forget of how dangerous and why in any way you can, whether it's just raising awareness, or if you have some level of influence, like whatever it is, being able to at least try to take a stand against this in some way is important. I'll throw it back to y'all. I want to say real quick, thank you to everybody hanging out in the chat. We currently have 64. This is the biggest audience we've had in the live. So thank you everybody for hanging out. This has been really good. It's been a lot of fun so far. And yes, thanks again to Daniel and Hesher for coming on here. And thank you everybody for hanging out in the chat. So anyway, I'll throw it back to y'all.
Well, thanks for the invite. First off, I'm really glad to be here tonight, and I've been thinking a lot about Palantir over the last few days here. I've got a couple more tabs here. We can lightning round when you're ready, so I'll kick it over to Daniel. He may have some comments because you made some really good points there.
I don't know how much I want to kind of get into like the theology behind where I'm kind of coming from, but I may want to make one point which may be kind of surprise, right? Like obviously we're supposed to fight evil when we see it, right? But instead of I'm trying to actively work on realizing that sometimes there's bigger things at play, and that God either wills it or he allows it to happen. So these kind of doom events, these black pills, Palantir, COVID, etc., even God can find the power to bring good out of these evil events. And so I think sometimes, we get distracted with a worldly frame, like, these events, these things are horrible, right? And in some way they are, but also if that's the way that, sometimes God needs to kind of wake you up or wake some people up. And the only way he can do that is through wars and these things that we view negatively. So to summarize it, like you can find a white pill in these black pill doomy kind of topics, I think, if that makes any sense.
Absolutely.
Hopefully that made sense.
No, it totally does. I feel you on that.
Yeah. I think, and trying to, obviously we can't make sense of all of it. We don't know what the whatever grand purpose there is. I mean, I will say that one of the things that has been, I guess you could say, a white pill for me is seeing how everybody in the alt media, particularly, at least like in the true alt media, I'm not talking about like Joe Rogan. Meanwhile, you have people very disappointing. Like, I know we have a lot of fans of his, and I listened to him a lot over the years. But AJ, right? AJ down in Austin, Texas. There was a Due Dissonance played a clip where he had somebody on the show, and this guy was talking about Palantir, and Alex says, Palantir, they're just a small company. They're no big deal. There's nothing to worry about. It's like, what, dude? What are you talking? This is what you've been screaming through bullhorns about for decades.
Yeah.
The guy that did the Police State movie is telling us not to worry about the ultimate
police state. Yeah.
I mean, it's totally insane, but. I do think, though, that it's been cool to see how many people have stepped up. Everybody, and it's I don't really like to get into like partisan politics, but you have everybody from, I think, like Derek Bros as a professed anarchist, and all the way to people in various stripes of the left and the right, like whatever it may be, people who have been speaking out about this and saying like, hey, no, this is a really huge problem, and so to see people really raising awareness, I think that's been really cool.
Yeah.
To see how many people have stepped up, and people, especially people who have been talking about these kinds of things for years, and to see people like Derek Bros, who's been on this for a long time, to see his work. I don't know the guy or anything, but just like seeing his work get put out there more and more is really a white pill, I think.
Yeah. That seems to be one of the main silver clouds. Anytime there's a Black Swan event, it's like there's a new wave of interest, a new wave of intellectual drive that people have that make them search for other places to have conversations, like, for example, this wonderful chat we've got going on here on the sidebar right now. Friendships are made, heck, marriages happen, and families happen out of some of this stuff. We've got, over the years, in the last 5 years, we've accumulated like more than 500 people in our Discord. There's people find places, they find other people, they question their own worldview, which is an exercise we all need to do, and is a hard one if you're new to it. So yeah. There's a lot of there's like this pathway, from blue pill to red pill to all the different colored pills, and then you land in the black pill as you sort of inevitably land there. But, like Daniel just said, once you're there, you realize you have a better context for what's going on around you, and a better context to understand how other people around you are reacting to it. And hopefully, if you're of sound mind and emotion and spiritual and emotional body, you can pop through that black pill and end up back in the white pill. That's my hope for myself, even though every morning I wake up and I look at the doom scroll and I feel the black pill vortex sucking me back in, and but open the door, you go outside, look at the dogs, look at the babies, look at the cool cars, go shoot some guns. Life is good,
There's still good in the world.
Yeah.
That was important for me. Like, when I talked to Maddie at first about doing this stream, like, I just hit the Palantir stuff hard, and I was like, man, this is like driving me crazy. This is so dark and so deep, and like I had to find a way to pull myself out of it, And so it's like, I think that's very important from what you said, Hesher, about being the black pill. That's not the final leg of the journey. And if you're humble enough and are able to kind of, try, there's a way out of it. I'll just put it that way.
Right.
Yeah, I think one last thing I'll say before we jump into the next clips is it's helpful to, I think, have people, have community, like people you can talk to about even if you don't know people, in real life. But I have people I talk to regularly who I haven't have met through these kind of things. I just started out showing up in Jay's chat back in early 2018, and now there's people I talk to regularly who it was just kind of came from just bantering in the chats. I had a 3-hour phone conversation with BLA the other day, which I talked to him a lot. I talked to Mikhail, Technographics, a lot, and have a lot of the friends in the group chats. And back during COVID, not to derail into that, but just to make the point is that when that kicked off, I wasn't really. I was in school, so I had a lot of things going on. I wasn't really quite in the chats and hadn't really started talking to a lot of the people regularly outside of just seeing each other in live stream chats and whatnot. That kind of came later, but initially where I was oh, this is. I didn't think it was. I was I'm not really that worried about it, and so I was hitting people up, and even people who would be. Who I would have thought we would have been on the same page, where even I don't know, I'm going to stay home for a while and just kind of wait this thing out and see what's going on. And I started to feel, I was am I the crazy one here? That is everybody else doing the right thing and I'm insane that I'm not worried about this? And but anyway, to realize that no, there are people who, and it's one thing to listen to and I obviously in favor of supporting independent media, but it's one thing to just listen to people talk about it. It's a whole nother thing to actually have conversations with people directly about these things and gain different perspectives and realize oh, okay, no, I'm actually not insane.
Yeah. It's the participation. You're not an isolated body somewhere experiencing life by yourself. And it's important to cultivate these relationships. That way you're able to participate in things in a bigger level.
Yeah, we got a lot of communications from people in 2020 and 2021, and even still to this day referencing those times that just were very appreciative of the 178 episodes that we did in 2020 and for providing the Discord channel where people could jump in and commiserate or tell stories or drop links or have video chats or share their games or whatever Discord people want to do. So I don't know, man. For me personally, and I think I speak for Spore too here, that affected us profoundly that happened because we were 5 years into a podcast that was specifically exploring fake news before it was even a term, and looking at propaganda, training ourselves to become experts in propaganda. And then the biggest piece of global propaganda you could ever imagine, the first one that we know of that affected everybody instantly internationally, came along, and we sat and we watched the whole of society take a knee.
Yeah.
And it was just very depressing. And for me, the only thing I could do about it was to just be on air and expose it every day that I possibly could. And it was taxing, but a lot of good things came out of it. A lot of good relationships came out of it. A job came out of it for me, where I got to make more connections and meet more people and be on air even more. So, it's weird to say, but I'm kind of thankful that it happened. Hard to say that when you know that potentially 500,000 people have lost their lives over the introduction of certain things we won't get too into. But, there again, that's maybe a message from God or something like that. Is that the kind of numbers that we need to see to have just a certain percentage of us wake the F up and start questioning things?
Yeah, and I think And just give a quick shout out to Boiler Room. Like I remember whenever the certain medical procedure passports came out, I remember I was like, didn't they talk about this like when they're like a Guardian article 2 years before that on
Yeah.
like y'all talked about on Boiler Room? Because I was like, whoa, like that. They were as soon as I heard that, I was like, they talked about this on Boiler Room. I remember this. I remember them going deep into that article.
They just started rolling out all kind of crap that we had talked about. I mean, I came up with the term social rejects club because of a conversation that was had early on in that show back in 2015 about, we were talking about the movie Falling Down, right? And how it felt for that character to see the guy with the sign out in front of the bank saying, I'm not financially viable. And we were just applying it to what would happen if a medical procedure or a medical product were, came out that the public was told that they have to take. You wouldn't be able to go to a grocery store. You know what I mean? We war gamed the whole thing out. And I said it would be just like being in Falling Down, except your sign wouldn't say I'm not financially viable. It would say I'm not socially viable because I'm not following what the government said. And to round it back to Palantir, that's Alex Karp's main message. If you don't bend to what the government says, it's not political at all. It's very simple. If you don't bend to what the government says and you don't accept the government narrative on who's a good guy and who's a bad guy, and there's nothing in between, there's no nuance, there's no research, the AI knows everything, and you don't have any need to go to Google and go to Twitter and research stuff. If you don't believe in that, you're his enemy. That's what he's saying. He will deperson you. He will debank you. He will tell the government to designate you a terrorist. He could do so in his own software. He could call someone up at the right place, and they can do it in their software. That's exactly what they're saying. You will love the tech. It's WEFian. You will own nothing. You will love it. You'll have no freedom. And if you don't like that, and you're willing to go out in the streets and protest or be big online, we're coming for you.
Yeah, and I think that's there's the idea that like, oh well, if the AI runs everything, then it's impartial and you're not going to have biases and all this stuff. But it's like, okay, AI can only operate on the data it's fed, and like say if somebody has like an anonymous Twitter account and they say some unsavory things on there. Well, okay, well, the AI says that because you said this, then you should have your bank account taken away. And it's like, okay, well, a human could look at that and be like, okay, well, what's the story behind this? Why did this person do that? Okay, they, got blackpilled and got depressed and kind of flipped out. And okay, like you can sort of reason through that. Be like, okay, this person is not a danger to society. It's just a guy that was having a rough period, and was just trying to find a way to let that out. There's tons of examples you could think of that. It's just one example, and so yeah, that's I think one of the dangers of that is not having. There's no nuance to it. There's not any, because AI can't reason. I know they claim that it can, but it doesn't have the human capacity for reason and empathy and understanding and looking at the bigger picture instead of just the data of, okay, well, you did this, you said this, okay, you no longer have a bank account, you can't rent a house, and you can't buy a car, like whatever it is.
They did that to our friend Dustin Stockton and his partner Jennifer Lawrence. They were a big part of the We Build the Wall campaign. And what they were trying to do was crowdsource money to build a segment of border wall privately on private property in New Mexico. And they did that. They accomplished that. They built a big, beautiful wall like you would think Trump would love, and you would think all the conservatives would love. And what happened, and there were two veterans on that crew. One, Brian, I forget his last name at the moment. I apologize. It starts with a K. But if you look up We Build the Wall, Brian, veteran, you can get an article about it. Actually, last time I looked for it, it had been taken down. So I don't know what's going on with that. But anyways, they got lawfare coming inbound at them over that. And I think 4 people, at least two veterans, one of them a triple amputee, Brian K, that I'm talking about, were sent to prison They're sent to prison for long prison sentences for extorting money out of crowdfunding. They did not extort money out of the crowdfunding. There's no evidence of that whatsoever. There's not one victim, not one person among the donors who said, hey, I have a problem with how my money was used. Nothing like that. There was literally like $1. Maybe it was 1 cent. I can't remember. It was some absurd amount of money that they were actually able to prove was used inappropriately. Like out of like $20 million, $60 million, $80 million, something like that. Some big number. That's how many Americans supported the initiative. And those guys are still in jail. Why is this man still in jail? Well, Donald Trump just released a bunch of people from jail, but 3 weeks ago. He was not among them. I don't understand this. You know what I mean? It's like, it's sad. It's just a sad state for where we're at.
Yeah, I mean, if they're federal, I guess if they're federal charges, yeah, it would make, and even if they're state charges, I'm sure they could put pressure on whoever, whatever state is filing them. But if they're federal, like, it doesn't make any sense why to do pardons. And that story was interesting because it was hard to find information about it, because the mainstream media would just, write articles and like, oh, well, they took this money and they went and bought, boats and watches and whatever, and like blew a bunch of money. But it's like, okay,
even Fox,
they're just asserting it. Like there's no sourcing on that. And it doesn't, they didn't even say according to court documents, according to the prosecutors. And it's like, if so, link us to the court documents, link to what, like, quote the prosecutor, link to what link to something. There was never any evidence. It was just, they took all this money and, scam these people to fund their lavish lifestyle, and, believe us because we said so.
Even Fox News doing that. That's an open goal for MAGA-oriented Fox News, would be to do actual journalism on that, actually interview him, actually interview Dustin and Jennifer. Dustin and Jennifer had their lives pretty much upended over it. They got removed from PayPal. They got removed from their bank. They had their passports taken. You know what I mean? Like they literally could not get a hotel room, get a rental car. Like they had to totally change their entire lives. And that's what Alex here is saying that he wants to do to people, right? Like if we're only sometimes going to kill you, well, in other cases, they'll dox your mistress and debank you and deplatform you. And, then you're like, you're in some sort of caste system at that point, right? Like you're in some like untouchable realm where, you can't just go swipe your card to get gas and groceries anymore. You live at whatever means, that's what we mean by a social reject. Like if a social credit score is what dictates your ability to participate in society, it's like this in China. There's all these people that can't get on the train and in some cases can't leave their apartment.
Yeah, then you're in like Demolition Man, right? That's kind of, where Minority Report, right? Or, you're hanging out with Dennis Leary eating rat burgers in a subterranean cave.
Back of the train in Snowpiercer.
Yeah, right. Yeah, let's. You said you had a few more clips you wanted to hit on.
All right, yeah. Let me rapid fire a couple at you here.
Sure.
This one is. Let me share it. This one's on a reel, so I hate reels when I'm trying to do stuff live because they loop and they don't have play buttons, all this stupid stuff. But maybe we'll see how this goes.
All right.
If you said,
Oh.
You're killing my family in Palestine.
Yeah.
Because you are killing my people and you're justifying it because of Hamas or anyone else.
Can we get security up there?
Your weapons and your AI support genocide. Shame on you. Have a heart of humanity. Have a conscience. It's all about money and power for you. Palantir supports genocide. You all are sick if you support genocide too.
So that's one of the ones we were talking about earlier. I found it while we were chatting there. Oh, no.
Yeah. He has no. It was weird. It was kind of interesting to. I'm not one of these people that lives and dies by body language, but him it's like he couldn't find a comfortable. As soon as she started yelling, it's like he couldn't find a comfortable spot in his chair, and was almost like came out of his chair as if he was, trying to. It sort of seemed to, make him uncomfortable. He also tends to move around a lot, has very odd movements. So I don't know, but those are the kind of people, the people who, whose families are being affected by this. And those are the people that's like, oh yeah, let's because they interrupt and yell at technocrat type of people, that those people should be labeled as domestic terrorists.
Mhm.
And that his reaction, I mean, it reminds me of Mike Preisner, who's produced for the Empire Files and hosts the Eyes Left podcast. There was a video that went in this day and age, it's like, what does viral mean anymore? But I think that one actually went viral because he was at a speech or like one of those conversations like that on stage, where that George W. Bush was giving, and interrupted, and was because he was in the army, and during, I can't remember if he was in Iraq or Afghanistan, one of the two, and he was yelling about, pretty sure it was Iraq, and how many of his friends had died because of that. And George W. was just like up there smirking. And it was like, this guy, he thinks this is funny. Like that is, and it took me, I think George W. Bush is an idiot, but I don't think he's nearly as stupid as I think he was playing a character to some extent. I'm like, no, this guy is a cold-blooded psychopath and like total, one of the most prolific mass murderers in the history of the world. And, to see how these people, it's like they have no connection to humanity. Like they're all totally devoid of empathy.
That's it. It's inhumane. Lady is shouting at Karp about the death of, the people that she loves. And there's no humane response. Like if you were, if your work had something to do with someone's death, I'm sure you would actually feel that and be affected by that. These people are so far removed that I don't think that they see, they're so insulated. I don't think that they have an easy time maintaining humanity or a healthy view of humanity.
Yeah. And he's like comes from that kind of blood, you know what I mean? There's a generational psychopathy in that lineage there. That's probably for another time, but it's like you're almost never surprised, and now it's like we just expect it, you know what I mean? It's like, oh, of course Klaus Schwab's daughter is taking over a lead role at the WEF, and of course Alex Soros is gonna marry Anthony Weiner's sloppy seconds and try to be some sort of uppity New York power couple and political movers. It's just like we just have to expect this now. Like we have to expect a lineage of, like, we've already had the blue blood lineage, right? We've had the lineage of the Rockefellers and all the 13 families and all this trash, to the point where it's just like, are these even people anymore? Like it's just like, are these people don't think like us, they don't eat like us, they don't do anything like us, and they don't have worldviews like any of us. As varying as all of ours are, it's probably not what theirs is. They're like deep in secret societies and deep in esoteric, black stuff, black magic-y stuff. It's just like, you can't even, I think that's one of the things that makes it hard for people to accept that this is what's happening, is because they can't comprehend that there are people on this planet, very powerful people who shape events, that don't have anything in common with you. They don't have a moral system like you do and I do.
It's evil. It's for your average person who's not evil. They have no concept. It's a kind of a different language. But, the way that some of these people act and the way that their worldview leads them to, it's very dark and it's very evil. And there's no context for your average person to understand or fathom, what's really going on, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and that's something that in conversations I've had with people who maybe aren't as into this kind of thing or aren't into it, this kind of thing, meaning, the kind of things we're talking about, who don't really know. The biggest wall I run into is, and I'm not out there trying to, evangelize to people about this. Like, I think a lot of us, when we get into this, like, we kind of get into this. Like, I have to tell everybody, all of my friends and my family about what's, and most people just don't want to hear it. And so I got over that a long time ago. But, people who, have come to me and be like, oh, so what do you think about this or that? And the biggest wall I run into is people not being able to comprehend that a lot of people in the positions of power, they don't think like us, like y'all were saying. They operate on a different level. And for most people, it's hard to comprehend that there are people who could, like George W. Bush in the famous clip with Mike Preisner, where he's just sitting there smirking as Mike is rightfully upset about how many of his friends died as a result of what George W. Bush did. Another example, speaking of Iraq, when Madeleine Albright was asked, is 500,000 was Iraqi children dead? Was that worth it? She said, yeah, we think it's worth it. I mean, it's like people, it's like their brains shut off and they can't, it's like there's a wall there and they can't, they can't comprehend that someone could actually say that, 500,000 dead people, much less children, like that's anything is worth that.
Especially when we're
innocent people.
Yeah. Women and children, non-combatants, especially when we were told over and over and over again these lies, right?
Yeah.
Mobile rape units, incubator baby tossers, WMDs, all of which came from intelligence agencies, various intelligence agencies, going back to what we were saying earlier, all of which turned out to be lies. And they'll still sit there. And, I guess a lot of American public doesn't care to look into the fact that those were lies. And I'm using those words literally, the fact that those were lies. If that hurts your head, look it up. You can find out everything you want to know about the people that told them, what their associations and affiliations were. All that stuff is out there now. And we're just to watch that woman laugh the same way, Alex, they didn't show all of that exchange with Karp there. There was a lot more of him laughing and some rebuttals from him where he brought out a lot of typical mainstream media talking points to that argument. And it was, so we got a abbreviated version there with that, but sounds very similar. It's a very similar mindset, and same with this stuff going on with Iran right now. They've been telling us since 1984 and again in 1995 that country was months away from, weaponizing uranium. And here we are again, 2025. And in March of this year, Tulsi Gabbard said there's nothing there. There's no proof. And here we are just a couple months later. She's changed her mind. Trump said, don't do it, Israel. Israel did it. Next day, Trump jumps in and says, well, we're in it now, so you guys better come to the table. The fuck are you talking about? They were at the table right before Israel did that. It's just like, and Tulsi's like, I'm with President Trump. Like, what? You should resign in protest or explain yourself. But no, we're just, we're on the precipice. Frankly, it's a little difficult for me to even talk about Palantir tonight because of, what I know is happening over there right now.
Yeah.
Well, and to go back to the article you pulled up earlier, I noticed the date on there when Alex Karp was saying that, we're going to be in with a threefold war with, was it Russia, Iran, and was it China? The date on that was August 11th, 2024. So, I mean, we've been in a proxy war with Russia since 2022? When did that kick off? Was it February 2022, I think?
Yeah, 2022.
So what, over like 3.5 years now, and then they've been rattling the war drums, with China, the whole Taiwan thing for a long time, and now the whole thing with Iran. So this isn't. I don't think he was just like spitballing there. I mean, that this shows that there's clear what's the word I'm looking for? Clear, preparation. I don't know. I can't think of the exact right word there.
Yeah.
There's the bigger picture.
Right.
Yes.
Pre-planning seems to be a theme going through a lot of the stuff that we've seen. I mean, even when talks were supposedly happening with Russia, Ukraine, and an agreement was, allegedly on the table. What does Ukraine do? Well, they go out and they do a strike deep into Russia, and we've got one hand of the administration saying, "Oh, we didn't know anything about this," and then on the other hand, you got Pete Hegseth acting like he knew what was up and knew this was going to happen. It's just like, this doesn't feel like what everybody voted for that voted for Trump. They voted for no more wars, and
Right.
now we're handing over our Fourth Amendment right to a guy like Alexander or Alex Karp, or it's not really to him. He's just the man handing it to the three-letter agencies and whoever else wants it. Okay, so I brought this up earlier, and just so people don't think I was being hyperbolic or I have no receipts, let's check this out. This goes back to 2006. No, we can't have copywritten music. Okay, so I'll play this as B-roll. You can see the room here. What am I looking at? You might be asking. Well, this is from the AT&T building in San Francisco. In 2006, former AT&T technician Mark Klein discovered a door with no handle labeled Room 641A inside an AT&T data center in San Francisco. Behind it was a highly classified space known as the SG3 Secure Room, operated in partnership with the NSA. Inside, Klein learned was a fiber optic splitter that duplicated all internet traffic passing through the building. This allowed the NSA to monitor emails, web activity, and messages, not just international communications, but domestic ones too. Room 641A had direct access to everything. It enabled surveillance on a massive scale, bypassing warrants and sweeping up data from millions of Americans. Klein later revealed that similar black rooms likely exist in other AT&T hubs across the country. So this is a government that's been doing this through corporations all the way back to 2006 and before that. I don't know when that room was set up, but well, it must be nighttime. My screen just went into night mode. But there you go. There's some pictures of it and the timeline and the facts as we know them.
I'm glad you brought that up, because I vaguely remember reading about that at some point, or seeing something about it. I didn't look too into it, but yeah, I mean that's I could be wrong about this, but as best I recall, I remember reading something about how AT&T has never, and then now we know that they were just feeding it directly to them, but that they never turned down a request from the government for any information on people's texts or calls or anything. So there you go.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and like you were saying earlier, Daniel, the genie's out of the bottle as far as big data. Yeah. You can't put the genie back in the bottle, and you can't put the toothpaste back in the tube. The data is already out there. Do you think that this government would let it go? Like, even if we did have a citizenry that was smart enough to say, nope, Fourth Amendment, stop it right now, or 10 million of us are showing up on the lawn. You're not going to be able to make a digital fence big enough for all of us, but that's not what we have in this country. So it's just like, where are the balls? There aren't any, apparently. They're just behind the keyboard, like us tonight. So it's pretty nutty. Here's another zinger from Alex here.
Americans are the most loving, God-fearing, fair, least discriminatory people on the planet. And they want to know.
Did we already do this one?
I think so.
And think.
All right, let's skip that and go to this one. Share this tab instead. This one I think we have not seen yet. Please don't be an inspirational speech.
Tell us about the beginning of Palantir. Whose idea was it?
It was Peter's idea. Peter Thiel. And Peter's like, hey, I've got this great idea. We're going to take the back end that we used at PayPal to stop cyber criminals, and we're going to turn it into a product and we're going to sell it to the intelligence services because obviously they could use the best software in the world. And do you want to co-found this?
So originally your clients were the U.S. government and the CIA.
Our first clients, so we got this investment from Incatel, which has always been controversial. It's a really small investment. Now they're no longer at the DPO. They exited, but it's always been very, if you Google Palantir, you'll see. And if it's a left-wing newspaper, by the way, I'm progressive, and I think the left is wrong to hate on us sometimes because without Palantir, the far right would be in a position of dominance because Palantir single-handedly, with the police forces, stopped major terror attacks. But in any case, you'll read Palantir, CIA-driven data in German. It's Data Octopus, which is my favorite. It's like as if we're hovering, and none of which is true. But
where did the name Palantir come from?
In the Lord of the Rings, there's a globe which allows the forces of good to see what's going on and organize, and that's Palantir. And the Palantir plural is Palantiri.
What an asshole! Sorry.
Was told to the.
Did he just refer to Sauron as the forces of good? Did I?
Yes,
he did.
All right. Just want to make sure I analyzed that properly.
I mean, Hindley makes a great point in the chat. He said that's literally Gil's sweater. Like he's doing he's dressed like Bill Gates.
Yep.
In that, and something I don't want to miss is that what Alex Karp just did in this interview, and there's an article I think it was the one in New York Mag, which I'll link in the description. It was kind of I've talked a lot on this channel about the myth making of various billionaires and founders and tech people, but what's interesting is he's basically confirming there is that he's just the face of this company.
Yeah, that
he's not. This is a Thiel project through and through. That Thiel was just like, hey, you want to join this, and it was basically to give a sort of wacky looking character, who could go out and be, I guess, mildly entertaining to the people who go to the World Economic Forum in Bilderberg. And I'm not saying that he's not a player in some sense. I'm just mean that this is clearly he's just the face of the company.
Yeah. And all those people like that, they all come with this weird narrative, and again, like they come off as like sort of these techno philanthropists, or they try to, right? It's like it's the Rockefeller model. It's basically the Rockefeller model. Yeah. All right, let's see what else happens here.
To Pentagon and/or CIA.
It was sold. Yeah, the Incutel gave us 3 pilots. One with the FBI, one with the agency, and one with a more classified part of the DoD. But interestingly, it was that part of the DoD that really got us off the ground, because they were struggling with finding out where terrorists were putting improvised explosves, and we figured that out in our product.
The war in Ukraine is one that your company's been involved with. Can you briefly describe what was described in a Washington Post article recently about what you're doing to help the war in Ukraine?
Well, so the genesis was our product's very well known. We have a counter intel product. It's called PG, which is very well known. We have a commercial product called Foundries, very well known. We have a product that is not well known called Meta Constellation, and that product allows you to use algorithms on large data sets to hone in on adversaries over, say, for example, a whole country. And the integration of data the infusion of data from satellite, telephones, others.
That's where the pause. Intel over a whole country.
Yeah.
What do you do with that? Why would you possibly mention that unless you were part of wargaming out like entire international strikes of some sort? Effects. That's freaky.
Yeah, that's alarming.
And then
very much so. That's
yeah.
weird.
Hindley says in the chat it's the movie Transcendence plus the show Devs plus Tony Stark. I think that's a pretty good summary. I don't know why I retained this bit of information. I didn't see the movie, but Larry Ellison actually appeared in one of the Iron Man movies.
Yep, part 3, I believe.
Make of that what you will.
Yeah, I think Elon's in one of them as well.
Oh, is it? Okay, I didn't. Yeah, that's Not surprised because he wants to be Tony Stark.
Yeah, someone told me that, but I know Ellison was in there. I caught that in the theater when I saw that back when I still used to go to those in the theater. Man, Iron Man 3 is old now. That's crazy. You seen any of those guys lately? They all went vegan. They're all looking not very superheroistic these days.
Yeah, I saw Robert Downey Jr. recently, and I didn't even recognize him. He did not look healthy.
Iron deficiency, man.
It's ambiguation of that, so people only see what they are allowed to see. On the battlefield is something that took us 15 years to build in various forms. The Ukrainians, without going into all details, but some of it, they of course went to the most important services in the world and said, okay, what should we use? And I'm very proud to hear they had one answer, Palantir. And then we were asked if we were willing to supply our product philanthropically, basically for free. And I was very in favor of this because our primary mission is, in fact, to set a global standard for the world for behavior. The product
pause it real quick.
Them according to this.
That is maybe the scariest thing that he has said so far in all the clips we've listened to, in all of the articles we've read. That is the scariest thing.
Yeah. No one elected him. You know, by what authority or what metric are you using? You know what I mean? It's very dystopian.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I'm going to back that up. A global standard for behavior. Is that what he said?
Yeah.
Good Lord.
In favor of this because our primary mission is, in fact, to set a global standard for the world for behavior. The product then allowed them, according to this article, to do targeting with a factor of 20 better, which basically, of course, the primary heroes here are the actual heroes of the Ukraine. And they're also, I have to say, one of the caveats is they're very, very technical. The people that have used our product there are world-class engineers, but they were also able to train normal engineers. And in their hands, they were able to change the targeting ratio, which, according to David Ignatius, played a big role in changing the course of the war.
Okay, so can the U.S. government get this same kind of software? Does it have it? Can you say that?
The U.S. government has our software,
okay,
and uses it very aggressively.
There you go.
That was the clip.
That's the clip right there, right?
That is the clip. That's wow. I mean, we could probably do another hour just on that clip.
I know. We could have paused 9 times in that 3 minutes.
Yeah.
Amazing. So, I mean, what more needs to be said? Who the hell are you guys? And why the hell is a America First, allegedly, government signing us on to billions of dollars of taxpayer money going to you in the big, beautiful bill? It's just, it does not make sense.
Yeah, that's golly. That's wow. That is chilling.
Yeah. I put all these links in the private chat for tonight, so you've got them.
Okay. I think I got
make
them
it
all
easy.
Copied. Yes.
All right. Cool.
Yeah. Well, I don't want to end on too much of a downer note, but yeah, go ahead, please.
Congratulations, you broke 100.
Did we really? Oh, 109. Wow.
Congratulations, sir.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Nice.
Yes, huge thank you to everybody hanging out in the chat and everybody watching. So yeah, this is really cool. It's good to. I noticed we got, I think, a few new subscribers, which is good to see. So yes, thank you. Thanks so much, everyone. But yeah, I mean, I kind of, to go back to the white pill that we were talking about earlier, is to get the blue light glasses back on. To go back to the white pill, is that I think it's because I've questioned sometimes, knowing all these things about how the world works. Sometimes I think, like, I wish I didn't know this. Like, my life would be, if I actually thought, like, if I actually believed, was it Jerome Powell? I think it was somebody from the Fed who was like, oh yeah, inflation is just going to be transitory, and if I thought, oh, we just have to get the right people in office and things will be better and all of this. Sometimes I think, man, would life be better like if I didn't know these things? But generally, I think that it's better to know these things. It's better to know what you're up against. And I don't mean up against in any kind of like battle sort of. I'm not advocating doing anything stupid here. I just mean up against in a spiritual sense, really. If maybe the most broad way to put it is that like these people tell you who they are. They tell you what they believe. They tell you what they're doing. And so I think that having that out there in the open is good. And if we know that and we can recognize it, then maybe we'll have a chance of making it through this relatively unscathed.
I mean, there's going to be a reaction to all of this, right? So the biggest problem that they face is that enough people understand and realize what they're up to and what their intentions are.
Right.
I mean, that's a white pill.
There will be, and I'll add to that and say there will be a reaction to all this, and there will also be applied stimulus to provoke reaction. And we here on this call and all you guys out there watching, that's what we want to be sharp enough to recognize, just like we did in 2020. It's like, wait a minute. There are propaganda tactics being levied against us right now. And propaganda tactics in 2025 are one and the same with the doom scroll. They're one and the same. It's a big cybernetic feedback loop that we're all if we're trying to keep up and keep a context, we're all subject to it. So it helps to have these groups, these group calls, these chats, these chat rooms, so that we can, really sit down and look at this from 9, 10, 65. I mean, where did we start? 25 people. We ended up at 65. Now we're over 100. This many people get in a room together, and everybody drops their worldview for a minute, at least to the point where, they have ears to hear and eyes to see. Maybe we can make some progress. Maybe we can recognize the next psyop for what it is ahead of time, and we won't be able to stop it probably, but at least we'll be able to help keep each other sane and come up with creative ways to survive and thrive. So that's my hope, and I really appreciate the stream tonight.
Oh. I mean,
absolutely. No, go ahead.
I was just going to say that, we're at war with powers and principalities and not necessarily people, right? And I forgot where I was going to go with that. I thought there was something profound I was about to say and drop the ball.
Well, it does make it hard to know what to do, right? Like when you know that something is wrong, when you know that the many people around you are not interpreting, they're not able to distinguish the signal from the message, and it's hard to know what to do. And that's one of those things about being up against powers and principality. You want to rebel, you want to educate, you want to fix. We inherently as moral people want to fix things or community build around it and stuff like that. So when there's some sort of line that we have to learn to draw, that not to cross when you're up against powers and principalities, or else you end up in a riot or something like that.
It's spiritual warfare. It's not just worldly warfare. It's spiritual. And I think that's the guiding light.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. So I would just say, it's easy to get blackpilled. Like we're talking about, I don't want to repeat everything we just said earlier, but yeah, I encourage people to, make and maintain connections with people. I'm not like a solutions type of person. That's, sometimes people will do analysis, like news analysis or whatever it is. And people will say, okay, well, what's your solution? And it's like, well, I don't necessarily have to have a solution. I think that, staying in building connections, preparing yourself as best you can using good OPSEC online. That may not be kind of, a thing of the past now with what they're able to do. But just don't do anything stupid, right?
Yeah.
I tend to think I have no problem with people protesting. I don't really know how much good going out and marching down the street with a sign does, but maybe it does, and that's fine. People can do that. But I also think those kinds of situations, having done a lot of research and study on those kinds of things, they often go sideways. And so I would also just tell people, be very careful about who you associate with. Like I said, it's good to make connections, but also, avoid people who are talking about crazy kind of things. But anyway, I could go on and on, but there are, I don't think all hope is lost. And
no,
I think having a spiritual worldview is one of the best things that's something good to understand, that no, it's not just these, weirdos who want to, spy on everything, want to sit around watching everything you do. It's like there's greater forces to
powers
to
and principalities.
Exactly.
Yeah. And it's a lot easier to change yourself than it is to change the world. And the people that end up getting in trouble are the ones that are only focused on changing what's external to them, rather than, what you have control over is the internal, controlling yourself, your opinion, your outlook, your attitude, and how you engage in the face of evil or in the face of the black pill or whatever.
Yes, very well said. But yeah, I don't know if y'all have anything else. I'd probably wraps up unless y'all have anything else. I think we've covered it pretty thoroughly, and I'll go ahead and, just for the audience, I'll go ahead and drop all the links in the description. Hesher, thank you for sending those links over. A lot of good information there. And Daniel, if you have anything, definitely you can send that to me, and I'll add it to the description whenever you get a chance to send it over. And also just a quick note, y'all can catch Daniel and I are both going to be on episode 3 of Mella's Diner tomorrow night at 6:30 Eastern. So I linked that one in the description. Are y'all doing a Boiler Room Thursday
night? Yeah, that's the plan.
Awesome. Yeah. So everybody, I linked Alternate Current Radio down in the description as well. So if anybody's not familiar, check that out. And anything you guys want to plug before we get out of here?
I just wanted to thank you and thank Hesher for an awesome conversation, and I appreciate the opportunity to talk to you guys and hang out with the chat and work through these things together.
Yep. Likewise, Daniel. It was a pleasure. I'm really glad we did this tonight. It was a good long stream, but I think we were really thorough. We had a lot of fun, and just really appreciate it, Maddie. And you can find me at alternatecurrentradio.com. You can subscribe to the Boiler Room. On YouTube, we are alternatecurrentradio.com. On Rumble, we are Boiler Room, I think. And I'm at Hesher Media on X if you want to follow me there. And Thursday nights, we're live for Boiler Room, and we have a Discord. If anyone wants to join our Discord, go to alternatecurrentradio.com. There's an invite in the main drop-down menu there. We also do Sunday Wire on Sundays with Patrick Henningsen. We get a lot of news out there on Sundays, so you can join us over there for that. We got the Daily Ruckus. We curate shows from a bunch of our colleagues, to include the Odd Man Out and Mystical American Patriot Society. And that's all I got, man. And of course, Daily Ruckus also. Shout out to Ruckus out there. You can find him at Weaponized News also. And that's all I got to promote. Not that it was a short list, but thanks again for having me, Maddie.
Absolutely. Yeah. Looking forward to getting both of y'all back on here. This was a really good discussion. So, and thank you again, everybody, for hanging out. If you feel inclined, share the stream, leave a comment. If you have any feedback, you can follow me on, what is my laptop doing? You can follow me on Instagram at Digital Minefield, and I'm working on getting the Substack back up and running. I'll do that eventually. I've got some things I'm working on, got some more streams coming up. So looking forward to getting you guys back, and hope to see everybody on the next one. Y'all have a good night.
God bless.